running a bit late. Our previous meeting ran a bit late. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Commission. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Marker.
Here.
Deputy Vice Mayor Long.
Here.
Vice Mayor Cassell.
Here.
Commissioner Burns.
Here.
Mayor Carney.
Here.
We have
Would
a
all
quorum.
rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. We have agenda approvals. So are there any items on the agenda which you would like to discuss? Yes.
Yeah, could I pull 6B, the Delray Affair?
Which one?
Delray Affair.
6B, the Delray Affair.
6B.
Yep, B as in boy. 6D as in dog, Citron Cooperman, because we're going to have the discussion, so we probably should pull it until the discussion
Okay.
is concluded, because it's an agreement.
So 6B will become 7AA.
Okay.
6D will become 7BB.
And I have one more, please.
Go ahead.
601, which is the appealable.
601, which is the
Appealable.
Mayor,
appealable.
is it all of them or just one?
Well, I'm only really looking for the gunite yard, but don't they come as one?
No, you can pull them individually.
All right, I'm just pulling the third one, which is the gunite yard.
I have a couple.
All
Just
right.
one
So
second.
you're the gun. You're 135 North Congress. Is that
Yes,
the- yeah,
that's
item?
correct.
Okay, so 6.01, which will now become 7CC. Yes.
Yes.
But just the gunite.
Just the gun. Yes. 601,
7CC.
the third item. Right. And Commissioner Burns.
6F, the pool safety grant.
6F.
6G,
God, we- 6F. I'm not going to make this 12 o'clock meeting tonight. Anyway, so
child
6.
program grant.
So wait a minute, I'm writing everything down. So 6F
Yeah.
is now going to be 7DD. Continue.
6G,
6G. Florida DOT, child occupant
Yeah.
protection, okay. So 6G is now 7EE.
GG. I thought we did have on the other.
And are there any others? No. And I don't have to mention mine until we get to the agenda item.
Yours is already pulled.
Mine is,
Yep.
mine is already pulled. Great. All right, so I need a motion to approve the agenda as, with its multiple amendments.
So moved.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. We have no presentations. We now have 5A1, which, that's not the one you were talking about, right? No.
Actually, it is.
It is, because
It
that's
is,
the
but
6B,
it had
right?
a corresponding item for the contract on the consent, so I pulled it until after the discussion.
Okay, so we are doing 5A1. So now we're going to be discussing just the potential engagement of Citron Cooperman. So who is, this
That would be
is Mr.
me.
Moore, correct?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So in any event, ladies and gentlemen, this is in response to commitments offered during the October 15th meeting to provide an opportunity for the commission to directly engage with leadership from Citron Cooperman regarding review of financial practices via the Department of Finance of the City of Delray Beach, given some observations that have been raised here at the commission meeting level. It was consented that this discussion would take place prior to the execution of the respective agreement. With that, we have a partner of Citron Cooperman with us this evening, Mr. Stephen Emery, who's in position to briefly introduce himself as well as to experience any specific thoughts and questions, concerns you all may have so that they can meet expectations to be outlined. So Mr. Stephen Emery, I'd like to introduce him briefly to that effect, followed by your opportunity to offer your thoughts and feedback so that they can prepare accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I appreciate that warm introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Was that what, that,
Well, the questions are that this item was on and off our agenda multiple times with the same contract, with the scope of work is not what I was asking for. And I think, Mr. Moore, you have an understanding of what I was asking for, and I think the commission does, but I think there's a bunch of questions regarding the finances, and I said I was not wanting to use the word investigative audit of the department or review of the department, but that's kind of what I'm asking for, and I'll give you a couple of examples of issues. One goes back to the last time I served, which was a while ago, but the city was looking from a particular department to purchase a large piece of equipment, and we got a discount for purchasing it early, and the money appeared to be in the account, but then was moved in and out multiple times and wasn't actually there. Eventually it became available, but money moving in and out of a department, and people being told that while it appeared the money was available, it wasn't. There was another instance where apparently to rectify a mistake from many years past, money was taken from a reserve account and placed into the general fund. Mr. Moore, Mr. Dunkley, and I had probably 15 emails back and forth on this because part of the problem was there were two different explanations as to why that occurred, and that was concerning. There have been employees who have said that numbers on financial documents differ sometimes from what they originally look like. And then we received an email from a constituent regarding journal entries, adjusted journal entries. At the end of the year, when we close out our year, Markham comes in and they review our entire process. And so the adjusted journal entries provided by Markham for the year 2023 were about 45 errors and totaling $89.5 million, according to this individual who requested this document from the city. And in 2022, there were 15 funds, 65 errors, totaling $51.6 million. Now, I looked at the adjusted journal entries. I don't know what's an error and I just think someone intelligent said, you may not know, you're not an accountant, but you know when someone's giving you information that doesn't seem like it makes good sense. And that happens quite a bit with respect to the finance department. And so, you know, hearing this the last time I served repeatedly, and then here again, and then seeing it in my own experience, I think we need to look at the finance department. I don't know at the end when Markham comes in and gives you those numbers what that reflects, but I did call over to the CRA and ask them, when Markham concluded your year, how many journal entries adjustments did you have? And they had none this year. Past year they had some, but this year none. And the individual who wrote to us also said that Boca Raton, when he reached out and asked, had none, and Homestead had none. So I don't know if that means 45 errors in a year totaling $89.5 million is an issue for us. But I would like somebody to tell me that we don't have issues in our finance department, because I can't comfortably say that we don't.
Yes, I understand, and I appreciate your concerns. A couple of thoughts come to mind for me because I do some external auditing as well,
Right.
So similar to what Markham does for you all. So the importance of having minimal adjusting journal entries from your auditor is really just so that throughout the course of the year you're able to really rely on that interim financial data. So you're correct in your concerns, and what I would probably do is our team would evaluate what those adjusting journal entries are, and we would see what types of accounts they affect, and then we would try to determine what kinds of controls may need to be implemented in order to avoid such adjusting journal entries in the future, so that you have ongoing financial reporting that you feel is more reliable.
And what about the concern about money that was in an account that was then not there, and moving in and out, money moving in and out of accounts, so accessible and then not accessible? Does that concern you?
It can, and probably what I would do in order to address that is we would evaluate your general ledger detail over a period of time at your discretion, and we could import that into a data analytics software.
What do you mean at your discretion?
So the larger the period of time that you want to look at is going to be a lot. It can, that's going to affect the number of transactions that we're evaluating. So if there's a period of specific concern for you, if it's a year or 6 months or 2 years or 4 years, that would be the part that's at your discretion,
Right.
as a commission, to whatever period of time you would like us.
I think there's three ways to look at it. Either we're making mistakes, right? Okay. Because we don't have procedures or don't know them. Or we're moving a money around. And in one instance, that insurance money concerned me because the error occurred years prior, but then corrective action was being taken in the current year, which didn't make sense to me. So you either have a problem with competency, or you have another issue. How do you determine what the issue is and correct it? That's what I'm looking for. Figure out what is going on and corrective action. Now, I don't think that's the scope of work means coming in and talking procedures. I'm using the term that I used before with Mr. Moore, which is I would call it slightly investigative, because you're trying to figure out what the problem is, and then corrective action.
Absolutely. So the engagement letter before you all is from our forensic team. So this would be evaluating essentially an investigation throughout what you determined to be within the scope of what you want us to look at. The second component of that is
Right.
after an investigation is conducted per whatever procedures you would like us to conduct and whatever you'd like us to focus on, if there's something that we find, then we would be able to offer certain recommendations that may be able to remedy this going forward and establish controls that we would recommend for the city in order to avoid such instances if we do find anything throughout
Right,
the
I hope
course
you
of-
don't, actually. I mean, that would be
Sure.
amazing.
Mhm.
But when issues come to your attention, at a certain point, you have to figure out how to address them. I didn't think that your letter actually said, it was more procedural.
Mhm. Right. So at the onset of an engagement like this, because we don't, in drafting that letter, we did not know what the scope of what this would look like. So generally, a letter like that's drafted, and then we get an understanding from you all of what it is that you would like us to look at, and then we have procedures that we can investigate whatever it is that you would like us to look at.
Okay.
It seems like adjusting journal entries throughout the year, money moving around from accounts, money being transferred, which of course is important for governmental entities because that's governed by a budget. So we would want to ensure that monies that are being transferred from one fund to another is within the budget. And that's important because according to the fund accounting, a lot of the funds that are in certain accounts, special revenue funds, they might be restricted for certain types of expenditures.
Correct.
And so,
They
so
are-
right.
The fund I was referring to is a restricted fund. So I guess the question then is, going forward, so you are understanding, but I don't know that your letter necessarily reflects what we're talking about. So do you change your letter of engagement, or do you feel that's satisfactory under the circumstances with what we're discussing?
I feel it is satisfactory because
Okay.
generally those letters are left stated as such, and then we would gain an understanding throughout the course of our procedures to tailor them as you see fit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
Looking
welcome.
forward to potentially working with you.
As am I.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
None.
Mr. Moore, you want to say something?
I'm all set, and I really appreciate this because, again, given the recent City Commission meeting discussions to this effect, I thought it was important and transparent to be public with respect to those expectations so you can hear directly from the Commission as a whole so that you can sense the support in that regard, and thus the format for today. So I really appreciate that, ladies and gentlemen. It did take a couple more weeks to get to that place, but this is very productive. You just clarified the basis for the engagement letter. It aligns now, given the clarification having been achieved here this evening. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm all set.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Orris, discussion of the Code Enforcement Division. Division near and dear to my heart.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Jeff Orris, Assistant City Manager. What we have for you today is a little update on where we are with code enforcement and some of the things that are going on. Purpose of the update is really to provide you information what's going on in basically three different areas real quick. some idea of some of the complexity of how the division operates, what the city is doing to review the operations and update different items there, and then expectations for enhancing the operations of the division. Basically, code enforcement, I'm not going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, but basically the division includes 17 employees listed there. Their purpose really is to look at getting compliance with various city codes and the land development regulations. The division very much takes on a we need compliance tact. It's not a let's hammer them with fines. It's really working with residents, business owners, property owners to make sure they understand why and get forward to compliance so that they don't continue to violate various city codes. They're responsible for encouraging that compliance. There's a number of different ways we do that through the Code Enforcement Division. One is education of the public. Code enforcement will speak at various forums to tell people what's going on, what are some of the top things to avoid, and the such. We do enforcement through a series of courtesy notices, which are generally door hangers, what you hear from people, and that tells people that there's some type of violation on their property, gives them some time to figure out how to handle it, and gives them opportunity to take care of the item before it becomes a notice of violation. We move onward for those who can't handle that time. And by the way, all through this process, code works with the individuals or the businesses or the property owners to try to come up with some way to handle things. Certainly if somebody comes forward and says, well, it's going to take me a little time. Well, how much time do you need? It's not you have 30 days and that's it, unless the item truly is that simple. It moves on to a notice of violation, which becomes a little bit more formal at that time. If the item is not handled, then it goes either before the Code Enforcement Board or the Special Magistrate for further direction and potential fine. The division does...
You may want to go back to that previous slide to emphasize the civil citation program that's actually being developed to be executed soon.
That's true. We did not go there because we're getting ready to do civil citations, a very different process. Civil citations are essentially an immediate fine. I know code enforcement's intent is to use those sparingly, only for those things that are immediate health issues, if someone's dumping or something like that, or people who have been repeated violators on the same item. This is not something that code enforcement is looking at using on a regular basis for just willy-nilly items that come up. It's their intent to continue to use the process of courtesy notice and NOVs as that goes forward. There are other areas in the city where that may be utilized a little bit more, police department and the such, but code's not going to try to use those on a regular basis unless the situation warrants. Sorry, I'm just not going backwards. Apologize. So the Code Division currently collaborates with several other departments on a regular basis. The Police Department, Public Works, Utilities, Development Services. In working with them, it's really understanding what their needs are, codes that are kind of on their purview, but code needs to do the citing work. They make sure that they understand what that's about. They occasionally get direction from those other departments of things that they've seen that code should notice, or code needs to go out and review. And of course, they work regularly with the city attorney's office to make sure that we do a proper citing, that we're utilizing codes that are effective, and also because it's the city attorney's office that helps prosecute those when they go before the special magistrate or the Code Enforcement Board. And we want to make sure that all that paperwork is appropriate, that again, that we've cited under proper codes, and that the city attorney's office can defend the citations appropriately. We have begun a review of code enforcement just to take a look at different things and review how they're doing things, what's going on, are we properly, effectively and efficiently operating. We're looking at all different things, including the educational efforts. Are we really getting out there enough? And we know we're really not. We can do more. And we're doing some of this through data, the number of cases open, their staffing. Is staffing sufficient? Are we assigning people to the right in the right way? Expansion of we're also looking at the expansion of certification. There are 4 different levels of certification for code officer. Ours are encouraged to get a level 1. That's really about it. If they want to go on more, we can do that. We'd really like to start encouraging them to go for all 4 levels of certification so that we have that. We're also looking at some turnover. There's been some high turnover, particularly with the code officers in the last 2 years. We're looking at 38% 2 years ago and 43% in the last year of turnover. That's a problem for us because we're training people about our code and then they're leaving. So we get a new person, we've got to train more, and that can become problematic. Particularly, I will tell you, one of the issues we specifically have is in our downtown area. That code is a little more complex. We don't have a lot of issues when we're out there in the residential areas. Those are very typical types of violations. You've got an unlicensed car on the property. You've got to cut your grass. Those are the same just about any city you go, but our downtown is a little bit more complex. As we have lost some of our officers to downtown, that's a lot of knowledge we've got to impart in a new officer. So we're going to look at some of that and doing a little cross-training amongst all the officers so anyone can handle that and they understand.
What are the principal reasons for them,
A lot
separating?
of them have just gone to other cities. A little better working conditions or pay.
I'm just curious. Go ahead.
So we'll be looking at that. The next thing we're getting ready to do is have an outside review. We're looking at several other entities who can come in, much like we did with purchasing. Have somebody come in from the outside and say, hey, what do you think of the procedures we're doing? How are we doing things? Are there better ways we can, more efficient, better ways to keep tabs on what's happening, what's going on? So we'll get that outside review, and we should have that shortly. So there are things we already know from our existing review. Like I said, we need to step up our public educational programs. We need to promote and make more public presentations so that people are aware of the code. It's been my experience, and I think all the folks in code here will also say most people want to comply with the code. They're just unfamiliar with it. So the idea is let's go out there and tell people exactly what our top things are that they need to understand and know. Creating more public printed materials. Code enforcement has done a list of top 10 violations and how to avoid them. We are looking at doing one right now for downtown because it is so specific that we can work with the DDA and such to distribute to all of the business owners so that they have a little better idea of some of the things we see frequently and that they should avoid these things or how they can work with us if they've done that. We also want to look at working with some of the other outside entities, the chamber, the DDA, homeowners associations. How do we work with you to find out more of what's going on and educate people and what can we do? As I mentioned, we're also looking at some increased staff training. There is currently in our code division what's called Code University. They spend time training the officers. We want to step that up a little bit. We recognize that, as I mentioned, particularly with the downtown area, we need to spend a little more time having code enforcement, getting some training particularly from our development services department on what they're seeing, what some of the codes are there, so that our code folks are better informed of what they're looking at and what the actual violation is, as well as making sure the code officers know why that is in place. What is it the city's trying to achieve? So both they understand it and they can convey that to property owners, business owners, and residents of here's why we have the code. We also know that we need to, like I said, find methods to reduce that staff turnover. We'll look at some of that. We'll look back at some of the exit interviews through HR and why people have left. And we need to inform the public and simplify ways for them to file concerns. We had a great presentation at our executive team meeting a couple of months ago from the OIG. And they left behind some brochures and some posters, and we put that up. I think we really need to get a whole lot of those brochures and a whole lot of those posters and make sure those are available at every public meeting we do. So if you have any concern with code or any other city employee, here's a place you can go to express your concern. The police department also has a hot card program. You can reveal that to the police department as well. We're looking at the possibility of also adding to that a hotline in the police department so anybody can call and say, hey, I think I experienced something I shouldn't. So the police department can take that on and look at it. One of the ideas for both of those, of course, is some people might be a little bit leery about reporting to the police department because it's still part of the city. Hence the OIG. They are outside the city. If you're uncomfortable reporting to the city itself, then go to the Office of the Inspector General. We have reported recent issues to the Office of the Inspector General. They have not responded yet. We do not know if they will come in and investigate. But all of this is about, we don't want to wait for them. We want to get into it and find out what we're doing right, what we may be doing wrong, and how do we find the way to do everything the right way, the most efficient way, the most effective way, and the way that's least painful to our residents, property owners, and businesses. So that leads us to the last part of this, which is, we'll continuously look for those improvements, the ways that we can handle operational issues moving forward, how we can make them better. Once the outside entity is here, we'll certainly walk them through ways things are done and let them take a look at everything and make recommendations. And then once that's completed, we'll take a look at their recommendations and how we may be able to implement them to make our process better, more efficient, to make sure that we don't have any issues moving into the future, that all of our departments are properly integrated so that everybody understands what's going on, and we can inform and educate and appropriately notice and get compliance on code issues.
Thank you. Well, I, for one, am very optimistic, very interested in the outside review component. As we had some issues here and there recently, I really hope that the outside review will help us develop better controls and little checks and balances and this, that, and the other thing. But anyway, to the commission, any comments?
Yeah, I'll start, I feel like. Forgive me for not being remarkably impressed with the presentation, because at the last meeting, we thought you were going to come back and tell us how you are making sure that this is just one person who had a problem and not, more than one person in that department.
That is part of the process, as Mr. Orris discussed in his presentation. And as I've shared with all of you individually, we self-reported to the Office of the Inspector General. That was an initial step.
Our city attorney reported us. Right. Thank you.
Well,
right.
We worked together to offer that direction to report to the Office of the Inspector General, and we're hopeful that they will take time to engage with us and go from there. In addition to the consultancy work we're looking to bring on board to get ourselves squared away. So we will be executing a path forward, and that was the basis of the presentation.
Okay, but if I may, you're talking about getting a hotline for people to call. Someone did call in February and reported this individual to the police. She stayed on working till October. Now, the question is, there's a couple of questions. There's the owner of the property went to a hearing in February, and the Neighborhood Services Department asked us to reduce down the fine from $5,000 to $1,000, but the city attorney's office, I believe, said no, because the police had put a lot of time into going back and forth to this house to break up. He doesn't, you don't have to come.
I'm going to need him to come up now.
But wait, I want to finish my question. It's
Afterwards.
The fine has not been paid since February. So the hearing occurred. There's a $5,000 fine imposed on the individual who owns the property. Has that fine been paid? Okay. Was there a lien put on the premises? Because that is procedurally what we do when no fine is paid. City attorney?
Don't believe so, no.
Right, but see, that's why I'm sitting here frustrated, because these are our procedures and we're not following our own procedures. Our procedures, we have a hearing, we impose a fine, and the fine gets paid. And if the fine doesn't get paid, then we put a lien on the property. And we're sitting here under this crazy spotlight because we have an employee extorting the individuals, and we're not even following our own procedures.
Ma'am, which is why we emphasized in the presentation that's just offered by Mr. Orris for the outside support to come in so that we can address that. We understand the specifics of this event.
You don't need outside support to tell you to follow your procedures, which you already have in place.
That's correct. And at this point in time, to cut to the quick, we have no reason to believe that this is the work of an additional individual or other individuals at this point. However, Mr. Mayor, if I may please, I would like to ask Chief Major to please come forward, because the reference has come about February. I clarified when the matter was brought to my attention, which was June 4th, and we went to work from there. I think that's important because
Chief,
we're clarifying publicly.
We know that it didn't come immediately to your attention. That's not the question I'm asking you. We've already had that discussion. What I'm asking you is, if a fine is imposed in February and the person did not pay the fine at all, and a lien should have been put on the property, why are these things not happening as they procedurally would normally happen and should normally happen?
Aside and apart from this particular case, I'm not aware of any other issues above and beyond that.
We
That's
don't
just
know
plural.
about any other issues because we
And
only know
that's
about
part of
this
the
one.
process we'll engage to find out if there are some definitive problems in
So
terms
we
of the
agree that
comprehensive
procedurally
process.
something went awry here.
Well, we know of one particular case, and at this particular point in time, we know of one particular case, Vice Mayor. However, with a comprehensive review and analysis, we'll be able to make some adjustments and go from there. And this is only the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of the presentation tonight is to offer a comprehensive overview in terms of the path forward so that we can get to the place in which we need to be. There'll be other updates on an individual case-by-case basis with you individually as well as to the commission as a whole. We have work to do.
Right.
And again, to answer the question, we are not in position to state that this is the issue involving more than one person.
I'm not talking about that. I'm wondering why a lien wasn't put on the homeowner's property for 8 months. It's just another level of,
that would be part of the analysis to get to that place, because I cannot answer why that specific outcome was the case from the dais here in this regard. That's part of what we would have to review as well. We'll be happy to do so. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is the purpose of this is to offer a path forward to get us to where we need to be. And I did spend an inordinate amount of time to offer leadership and guidance accordingly, which I'm committed to do.
could I ask one
Well,
other
as
question?
you know, just a few seconds, as you know, I have also raised issues about procedures
Yes,
within
sir.
this department, privately too.
You did.
And there have been a lot of good points made here. I don't want to exhaust it too much up here because the Inspector General is now involved with an investigation, which theoretically should conclude with some kind of a determination of what the timeline was, what went wrong, what we should have done, et cetera, et cetera. As for the matter of whether the lien should or should not have been placed, that is something you're going to have to internally figure out.
That's exactly right.
Because clearly, most people, if they don't pay a fine, get some kind of lien pretty quickly from the city. So,
Sure.
I mean, that we want to make sure that my whole issue always is with code, and it's the calls I think we all probably get is a lot. I get calls from people. Everyone's worried about the equal enforcement of code.
Yes, sir.
And there's many parts of this city that seem to get more attention than others.
Right.
And part of the issues that I have is I want everyone to be, the code enforcement to treat everything, every situation exactly the same. So that if I'm violating my occupational license, I expect to be fined.
Yes,
I
sir.
want that to be applied across the board to any other thing. So I really am welcoming this outside review. You make very, very good points, all of which I'm hoping are going to be thoroughly examined. And when I say thoroughly examined, turning over everything, because even if it means some embarrassment to the people inside, saying, yeah, we should have done it, or I did it because, we need to know why. And I think this is, because that's the only way we can absolutely be sure of equal
Right.
enforcement under code, because most people's involvement with the city, they only have a couple of areas where they get involved with the city, but code enforcement is one of them.
Right.
That's they're front line with a lot of the people in town. So I'm really very, very, and we've had, as I said, you and I have had this conversation. We have not, but we're having it now.
Could I add one other thing to it?
I'm sorry, sure.
Could I just finish add one more thing? Because the city attorney and I were discussing this after the last meeting when Ms. Burns and Mr. Long talked about putting code in the police department. I don't think that that's a great idea, and I expressed that, but what came of the discussion, and I don't know if we can answer this, code is acting almost like permitting in a sense. Why couldn't we move code into the building department? And if we could move code into the building department, could we utilize then the building fund money to pay for code enforcement? In other words, we have all that extra money in the building fund.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
saying it's something to contemplate and look into. I'm not saying you have to answer it tonight.
I mean, I shared the same thing with Moore. Obviously, I didn't know what you guys discussed.
I didn't discuss that at all
about
with Mr. Moore.
the not having the police department do it. I just
Yeah.
don't think, I don't want to essentially have police powers out there
Right.
trying to deal with the average citizen on the street, because
Correct.
that's really the last thing they need. As for how we eventually, in part of your analysis, it may be that this division gets moved with different kind of overseers, so to speak.
That's correct.
Whether the oversight is coming from this department or that department, I don't really care as much as long as it's fairly and consistently, enforced across the board.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my administrative direction is what we've outlined here today. My interest is to be transparent with the commission, to provide an overview as to a path forward so that we can get to the absolute best place possible. We are looking forward to getting this executed over the coming weeks. Of course, between this month, next month, early new year, I look forward to offering you all some specific updates in terms of outcomes and where do we go from there. So we will work expeditiously because we are treating this extremely serious and doing what we can to offer those specific recommendations. And the overview as provided by Mr. Orris will help us to get there. So I humbly request that we be given an opportunity to proceed as I've outlined and as Mr. Orris has outlined, so that we can offer some specific corrective actions where applicable, as well as to offer that assurance and confidence that the community deserves.
But this really should be done before the end of this calendar year.
I'm looking forward to updates being offered by the beginning of the new year.
I'm looking forward to implementation by then.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Your meeting calendars in January are circa the 7th, the 14th. Somewhere in there, I'm looking forward to offering a follow-up presentation to the commission in a public forum so that we can get down to business in terms of what the next steps will be, number one, as well as number two, offer the necessary clarity to get to where we need to be in terms of any other outcomes that might be necessary.
I'm hoping that meeting says what we've already done. I mean, we'll leave it at that.
Well, I have to proceed with the process that Mr. Orris outlined for us very well.
It's your purview. It's your office. I'm not going to interfere with how you do it.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that, but it is the direction being offered by the Office of the City Manager. And again, the commitment is to keep the commission informed, and it has to be accomplished in a public setting, such as a regular meeting presentation. So the next update will be in January.
Understood. Mr. Long, do you have any comment?
I'll keep it quick because I don't think litigating these issues makes sense right now, given that we're awaiting a review process from the IG. I appreciate that we are taking a step down the road of some comprehensive improvements. I think they're very much needed at this point. I personally think that path should lead to code enforcement being under PD. I've always thought that. I was glad Commissioner Burns brought it up. I think that makes the most sense, and I'm hoping that we can start to entertain those discussions after this review process is complete and start discussing where this is headed. I don't just want to have reactive improvements. I want to actually have a plan for where this is going. So I'm happy with what we're doing currently. We have to, I guess, wait, but I am hoping that we can start to have a more long-term approach to this whole thing afterwards. Thanks, Jeff.
Mr. Marker, any comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. I mean, clearly there was a breakdown in processes and procedures here. No question about that. I welcome the external input that we're going to get, Jeff. I think that's going to be really helpful to us. And I do think we need to tighten our controls to ensure there are no more incidents like this one. This was bad on a lot of levels. And I think part of what was bad is there did seem to be a long timeline until we brought it to more of a conclusion. And I hope with new processes and procedures, if there is, God forbid, there is another breach at some point, that we can catch it and deal with it like instantly. And it sounds like you're on a path to do that for us, so I appreciate that.
Commissioner Burns?
Yes, and I did suggest that, we move it to police. However, I'm happy to see that some outside review will happen and some of the deficiencies and changes will be recommended, and maybe we'll see that some other path can be followed. I just know that we need some significant changes to this department and, how it's operated, and find out the root cause and identify what the deficiencies are. And I'm hoping that this outside review will, put that information, give us that information. And, as the mayor said, that we have some really, selective enforcement going on, and we have all kinds of issues. So hopefully this outside review will provide what we need so that we identify, what it is and a path forward, whether that's with the police department, the works, or wherever it is. I just would like to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, the ultimate oversight, whoever that's going to be, is really secondary to me. It's getting the internal stuff with code enforcement really, under control, really under control.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just to conclude a bit. So again, a follow-up public presentation I'm looking at in January, as I committed a little while ago. that may very well take the form of individual discussions I may see fit to offer each of you all as I engage with you in my periodic meetings with the commissioners individually in terms of some other necessary steps that might be appropriate in that regard. My interest in accomplishing that is to be able to productively address some specific outcomes that you might need to be aware of so that we can have a smooth presentation publicly when the time comes around in January. So a number of moving parts, and therefore that is my commitment moving forward, and I appreciate that, but the train is down the track. However, there's one other piece I'd like to clarify because it did come up a few times, and I think it's important. Whenever something comes up publicly, I feel that it is my obligation as your city manager to create an opportunity for some sense of responsiveness in this regard. Some issues regarding the dates and that clarification, and a couple of you all questioned me about this individually. So I did ask Chief Major to please be here to briefly touch that so that we can offer closure and proceed with the path forward effective immediately.
Mayor, Commission, Mr. City Manager, Russ Major, Chief of Police. Unfortunately, I'm not able to opine too much on this particular matter, only because we also punched an internal affairs investigation on it. What I can tell you is that my office was notified the latter part of May. We immediately met with Mr. Moore and Human Resources, and we took immediate action. I would say the day that we met was the first week of June.
It was Tuesday, June 4, 2024.
First week of June, and at that juncture, it was determined that we had enough information to move forward with putting the employee, Ms. Wesley, on administrative leave with pay. The delay from that point forward was really just a product or a byproduct of the investigation. We had to get subpoenas for telephone records, subpoenas for bank records, and we were working through the state attorney's office on that. There was no issue with regard to what we were doing as a city or what we were doing as a police department from that juncture forward. It was just a matter of getting the information from the entities that I mentioned. Once we got all that information and intelligence, we were able to determine that we had probable cause, and we immediately moved forward with the arrest. And I believe at that juncture, she was placed on either leave or no pay or terminated.
No pay and followed by termination. So the focus at the time was to get to that place, close that out so that we can get squared away, and we did.
But what I will say is the February date between February and May, Commissioner Casal, that is the information that I would like to find out.
Right.
And that's exactly why I immediately punched an internal affairs investigation, because we need to know what was that delay.
And if I may, I was never concerned about the pace at the police departments, but the city was obligated to do their own internal investigation once they found out, and that took 4 months. So
the reason
we don't have to keep circling, but if you, let's just say we're going to work on doing better at this point.
That's the basis of the presentation, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all as well.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chief.
Item 5A3. Now, before we get started on this, Jeff, because I know you've probably put a lot of time into it and your presentation is going to be extensive, I really think that this item, as it relates to the grant policy in general, should be moved to a workshop for us to discuss, and I'm going to go through my reasons why, but as it relates to this item, which is why I'm saying this item should really go to a workshop. First of all, there was no agenda cover report. This is the only item that we had in this entire thing without any agenda cover report, which kind of sets forth, what we're looking at and the matters, they explain what we're doing. And we had 2 attachments here, which of just reports as to each one of the grants were given without any explanation. So we really don't understand those. And finally, you did have a grant policy at the end, but there was no kind of discussion about how that grant policy related to the particular grants that were given. Because in the grant policy, it talks about the department will decide on this, but it doesn't seem like things are really going through the department. It seems like all the grants are being funneled to an office where that person is the one making the grant thing. So it's not really being done by the department. So, and I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that's not what your policy says. So if we want to make that change, and as I said, that's a commission decision. If we want to make that change, we really need to discuss it. And so I'm recommending, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that we really take this grant policy, which is an important policy, because it also relates to how we're going to deal with the opioid monies and how we're going to deal with the Karen monies, that we kind of move it to a workshop to discuss the policy in general as to what we want to do, how we want to think on how these grants should go. So that would be, I don't know how the board feels, but we really need a full discussion of the grant policy.
What was he going to be presenting to us today? Because he's correct, there's 2 slides in there that have nothing on them. And then there's the procedures.
So what I would tell you is that the lion's share of all of that work was done by Janai Bowens. Janai does a much better presentation than I do, and it was designed to answer all of those questions that the mayor posed.
But it's focused on the existing policy. My point is, we need a full discussion of the grant policy, where we want the grant policy to go, what are our priorities, because we're not irrelevant to the process either. And I mean, I understand that you're doing it based on this, but by your own admission just now, Janai's the one doing the grants, whereas your grant policies talk about the department heads. So there's some disconnect there, and all I'm saying is the entire grant policy needs a review, and I'm not saying this, what you're doing now isn't better, I'm just saying that's not what's written. So my goal would be to have the grant policy fully discussed by the commission as a going forward basis, as opposed to a report on what we've already done. I mean, this stuff's already done, and we've got 135 pages of line items of grants. Great, but that doesn't answer the question of what the grant policy should be.
Would you be offended if we put this on a workshop? Okay, let's just do
Oh,
it.
no, she's going to be
She worked hard, she's here in
She's
the
going to be a
evening,
participant
it's
in the
6
development of the
o'clock.
policy.
Let's do it then.
Well, I'm not opposed to a workshop. However, I think that I initiated this last year when I asked that we get someone that would that would do the bookkeeping of the administration of the grants, because we have them all over the place.
Right.
You never know where they're going, who's getting them, how they're getting it. So I asked that we get someone to, do the bookkeeping sort of, so that we can see what grants are coming in, what grants are going out, how they are.
Are
and
you
then-
just speaking, we
And that's not
need
the-
to
that's actually not part of
differentiate
the
the
issue.
grants,
Not the
though.
federal grants, the grants like the opioid funds, like the Caring Foundation, those grants that we can administer to local nonprofits.
Yeah, actually,
We have many of them. That's why I pulled these things from the agenda today. I want to know who's getting this money, where is it going? And so they're all over the place. So I think
You have asked this question many times, so
many times.
let's just get
and
it
so
on the
and now
workshop.
additionally to that, we need a policy. So
correct. So what I'm saying,
a workshop works.
Yeah, before we go through all these wonderful pages, and it was interesting, there were grants I didn't even know, to groups we had, which
That was the whole
is
purpose
good,
of
and I'm
asking
glad
for
we
this.
have all this. But in seeing some of it, I just think that we need to redefine, at least from our perspective, what the grant policy is, so that we better understand how these numbers got to be on these sheets. That's really kind of what all I was going. And as I said, there was no cover sheet, which I like because I always read the cover sheets to give me a general flavor of what's, covered.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I make a suggestion,
Yeah.
given the feedback that's being offered? The purpose of this presentation today was actually fairly brief because, again, we made a commitment to come back today, November 4th, to offer a brief update. You all can see that in writing in terms of the number of grants available, et cetera. Given the interest to connect the dots in terms of what's happening in terms of the overview, as well as the interest in terms of tightening up the policy, we can format that for a comprehensive workshop in December. So your meeting scheduled for December are December 10th Tuesday, December 17th Tuesday. So a workshop to take place an hour in advance of the regular
No,
meeting.
let's not do it in the December month.
That's up to the board. I mean,
I'm thinking Christmas Day, we should do it.
Yeah, there you go.
I do not
I'm
recommend
gonna come in
December
with you
25th. That's a
Christmas Day
Wednesday,
to
by
do
the
it.
way, so.
yeah, it's growth. It's start of Christmas and Hanukkah. I think that's when we want to do it, definitely. We'll have a menorah here and a Christmas tree over here, and we'll be in great shape.
All right, what would be the commission's pleasure? Because if I may, we will also talk about the A-guide funding piece as well,
We
because
were
the city,
supposed to talk about the A-guide in November.
right,
So
so,
why don't we do this in November with the A-guide? If you're going to be talking about the A-guide in November, let's just do it in November.
well, later in the meeting, we'll talk about the opioid piece for the workshop meeting in November 19th as well. So
This is a full review of the
This
policy.
is the 4th time we've talked about.
I understand that, and that's why we're here today, ladies and gentlemen.
A list on that, too.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Okay, so are we going to do both in November?
We can,
I don't mind moving the policy discussion to January, if that meets
Thank you.
everybody's timetable.
Yeah.
Okay?
This policy, the
Yeah,
grant
but the
policy.
opioid thing we really need to do on the 19th, because that's just too important.
Okay, let's make it happen January. Your calendar's in
Could I ask
January.
the city attorney, there, at this point, how much are we, when we talk about the opioid litigation, you and I talked about this, one of the parties is no longer in the litigation.
Purdue.
What are Purdue, thank you, the biggest party in it? So how much money are you looking at annually for us to distribute on the opioid litigation at this point in time? Approximately.
I looked quickly, and it's
We
I
actually
want to
have
say
an
it's less than
agenda
100,000.
Less than 100, probably much on the less end lower.
It was hard to tell because there were some larger payments. Some of the payments are larger in the beginning and smaller at the end, so it's hard to tell, like gauge an average each year.
Yeah.
I can pull it up and have
Because,
an answer.
Mr. Moore, we had a meeting and we discussed forming a committee, and the committee was going to go and bring us the programs in the area, and we were going to review them. And then at some point it became, we're having a workshop, we're going to have one person, they're going to present for 40 minutes and we're voting, which we don't even do in workshops.
I don't like that.
No, we don't vote in workshops. We don't have 40-minute presentations. And we were only given the opportunity to one applicant to come in. That made no sense. I
And-
don't understand why things are changing
That was
so
the
abruptly.
that was the discussion we had on the 15th.
But not
We
that they
didn't
be the
discuss
only
that on the
ones.
15th.
So, ladies and gentlemen, which is
That was
why,
not it.
which
You
is
just said
why,
you wanted to hear from them.
yes, ma'am, which is why I amended the agenda for 10A to talk a little bit about that, what that would look like openly, so that we can all be clear. Ideas were communicated as in terms of why different formats,
We had a
different
whole workshop and
considerations.
we left with clarity on it. I just don't
Well,
understand.
but it's been evolving since that time, so we're going to come back today so that we can prepare adequately for November 19th, which is why I amended the agenda for 10A so that we can discuss what that might look like, because since that workshop meeting, there had been some discussions from multiple people individually as to what that might look like, and I have to have a process so that we can all be in alignment. Therefore, 10A, as amended in this agenda, to talk about what that will look like once and for all so that we can prepare adequately for November 19th. I understand what you're talking about in terms of what previously occurred, but it's been evolving, and that is the truth. And so therefore, at the end of the meeting, I look forward to achieving some sense of alignment in terms of what happens November 19th.
I just find it confusing that we have an entire workshop on the subject after we talked about it at a meeting, and then we're doing, this will be the fourth discussion on this subject matter.
Well,
But
it's been
that's-
evolving, and I understand.
Okay.
If you want to know the truth, I was going to call it as a special meeting because I want it as an action item. I want it done.
I totally agree with you, but the problem is we already asked to form a committee of experts to come bring us the local organizations that could utilize the funding, and then it somehow transitioned into one organization we're hearing from, and we're voting on it at the end. How do you vote on, first, you don't vote in a workshop, one. Second, how do you vote on it at the end when you've only heard from one person? And third, don't we have an obligation with this money to allow access by other vendors in the city?
This Palm group that, as far as I could tell, really just coordinates. It's that if they're not going to be, we would be the ones choosing which were the ones the ultimate selectors. But you want to.
What about our committee that we've spent the night talking about forming, though?
I
What
think
happened
that
to the
Palm has
committee?
to be just one person of that committee, of the task force.
They were really part of that committee.
Yeah.
Right, not they're getting the money and distributing it. They're going to be sitting at the table with the committee
Making
to
recommendations
dictate
to us.
where, or not even dictate, sorry, present to us.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
Wait, can I just, I have an answer. 2024, it's approximately $88,000. they
Thank
would
you.
receive.
So it's much less than everybody thought, first of all.
so in any event, ladies and gentlemen, getting back to the topic at hand,
you.
as far as the aid guide funding, we can probably talk a little bit about that briefly during the November 19th meeting. City manager discussion items, I like to, because we did make a commitment
need
in
to,
November.
because
So if
people
I may,
need to
yes,
see.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Total agreement. November 19th, 5A1, we'll make that happen. The workshop meeting concerning the grants policy piece, we have a workshop meeting scheduled for January 14th, 2025. We would make that part of the mix and offer an update in that regard at that time. So we'll be fairly comprehensive in that regard to alleviate any concerns about December. And we go from there. At the end of the regular meeting agenda, I like to get back to November 19th. However, much productive discussion has already taken place in that regard so that I can seek your consensus at that time so that we can adequately prepare for November 19th.
Okay.
So if I may, please.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Bowens.
Ms.
All right,
Bowen, Mr. Orris, you all are excused.
You are excused. Thank you very much. I know you were waiting to go, but
Always ready.
I'm trying to move us along here, not at your expense. Well, maybe at your expense. We now come time now for comments from the public on agenda and non-agenda items. If you wish to speak on any agenda or non-agenda items, please come up to the lectern, give your name and address for the record, and you will each have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Mavis Benson, 800 Greenswood Court, a resident, business owner downtown, and chair of the Merchants Association. 2019 was the last year that the Delray Affair ran from Swinton to 6. For many years, even decades, it ran from Swinton to the Intracoastal and included Veterans Park. Our ask now is that it goes to 6, which will include the 500 block. Please consider these 2 points. 1, investment and dedication. You may or may not know this about these small mom-and-pop legacy businesses. The Colony Hotel was built in 1926. The Boughtons bought it in 1935. It continues to provide the old flavor charm in our downtown. It's a historic property in the heart of our downtown and is a beautiful architectural work of art, inspiring numerous artists over the years to capture it on canvas. Who's Karen has been in business for 14 years. Just Hearts first opened in downtown Delray 30 years ago. Salutations, this family-owned boutique, has been in our downtown for 26 years. Mare Blue has been in business 21 years. Their investment in our downtown serves as building blocks contributing to the success of our downtown as we know it today. Including the 500 block would recognize the long-standing dedication of these merchants who have invested in our community over the decades. Number 2, it's about trust. With any special event, there are strict guidelines in place to ensure the layout meets the standards of both the police and fire departments. This is essential for the safety and well-being of everyone attending these events. Their expertise is managing large gatherings and handling potential risks, help maintain a secure environment for both the community and visitors. For decades, the original footprint of the Delray Affair was effective, well vetted, and it received constant approvals. To my knowledge, there has never been any incidents of concern. The approval by police and fire is crucial, especially for events like the Delray Affair, where crowd sizes can create unique challenges. We must give them our trust. Nancy Stewart has a problem. She has worked hard for many years and has created an event which is recognized as one of the top outdoor art festivals in the U.S. Due to its success and growth, she needs more space to accommodate her growing wait list. It's a problem, but it's a good problem. We have a simple solution. Include the 500 block in the footprint. It worked well before, and it can work well again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Long.
George Long, 46 North Swinton. Excuse me. Talk about code enforcement. I don't have enough knowledge about the procedures and the investigations and all that business. Leave that up to you. But as a habitual offender, I have dealt with code enforcement, and these people are courteous and helpful and genuinely are interested in explaining to you or me what's wrong and what you need to do. I thought one court several years ago, I thought the code enforcement guy got out of his truck. I thought he was going to come trim my trees for me. He was so concerned when I was,
I saw you with your weapon the other day.
Yeah, okay. But anyway,
tree trimming.
While I was here, last time we were talking about the in-lieu parking, and I didn't know anybody was going to actually listen to me. And so I have to make a couple of corrections here. I'll make it clear that I have no complaints at all. I was only making observations when I brought up an example of the high cost of things like that. And this proposal is so well planned, experienced, professional city staff. It's really great. They recognize the importance of keeping East Atlantic development moderate. And we need to keep in mind, that's why people come to Delray, because they don't have big buildings, and you can get that anywhere. Loud restaurants and big buildings, that's not too far, fine. So anyway, what I wanted to get at is to say if these suggestions are good, and we don't want to keep chipping at it. Trying to erode it and have too many exceptions coming until it becomes ineffective. So actually, in my particular case, the situation is so unique, I shouldn't even brought it up as far as that's concerned. But anyway, don't get carried away chipping at this thing.
Thank you for your input, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioner, and Stacey Wright, 225 Southwest 7th Avenue, Delray Beach. I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you in supporting the Pompey Park project. We greatly appreciate that. We were on pins and needles thinking that, hey, we're at it again, here's another commission, you're not going to support it, we'll be back another 5 or 10 years getting that project done. But thank you very much. And I like to say to Commissioner Cassell, I know a lot of times we don't agree, but thank you for your special support, and I personally greatly appreciate it. But on the other hand, the cat situation. That has not gotten any better.
I apologize, and I'm still working on that.
Thank you.
Situation? Oh, the cat. Never mind.
Not the cats themselves. It's the person that's
Yes,
feeding
we understand.
the cats.
Message received, yes. I don't know if you got in trouble last time. I don't want to say that.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Ridley. I live at 210 Northwest 2nd Avenue, Delray Beach. 2 concerns I heard tonight from code enforcement. What is the educational background that you need to be, first of all, a code enforcer? My son went 4 times for 4 interviews and never got the opportunity to be a code enforcer. I'm trying to figure out what's the level of education do you need, because they do have a 2-year degree as well. So I just want to throw that out to you since they're leaving. I'm just trying to see how we can keep some of our men or people here in our community. Second, I'd like to say thank you for leaving a legacy in the Delray community with Pompey Park. Thank you, Commission. Stick to the plan. Stick to staff. Thank you for listening to them. If you listen to them, we always do well. So thank you for listening to us, Delray City staff, and making that selection. And have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ridley.
Good evening, Anthony Gervasi, 204 South Seacrest Circle, also the co-owner of the Bridge Cafe in downtown Delray. I wanted to thank you regarding the ordinance that's supposed to pass tonight, Ordinance 20-24.
Mayor?
I cannot tell you how important it
It's
is.
actually a public hearing, so we have
Yeah,
to
that's a
reserve the
public hearing, so you can
I
to hold your
apologize.
remarks on that to the public hearing. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I have a question.
Your name, ma'am, you have to introduce yourself. We know who you are.
Ernestine Holiday, 40 Northwest 9th Avenue, Delray Beach. I have some people that have applied for some of the positions that are on the available vacancies. One young lady applied for a position and she was told that she had to be 3 years cigarette free. Well, if that's the case, there are going to be a lot of people going to be turned down. Is that policy smoking in the office or on the properties?
Well, I'm not the HR, but I will say that it's you're not supposed to smoke cigarettes anywhere.
I know.
That's what the policy is, and it has to do with. It's really an HR thing, but it has to do with the insurance that we have to maintain for the employees' use.
Okay, that was my question.
And that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernestine.
Hi, Commissioners, and thank you for having us. I am a merchant on the 500 block of Atlantic Avenue. I'm Sarah Epstein. I'm at 537 East Atlantic Avenue at the Colony Hotel on the corner of Federal and Atlantic. I've been there 30 years, and I also speak for most of the merchants that are on our block. 2 years ago, several years ago, the Delray Affair went by us and actually went all the way to the bridge. 2 years ago, we were told 2 days before the Delray Affair that it was no longer going to include the 500 block, and we had all hired extra help, we got extra merchandise, and not only did it not come to the end of our block, we got blocked off by dump trucks. So people go to Fifth Avenue, and they have no reason to go further because there's dump trucks in front of them. We implore you to please include us. I mean, we have been on the 500 block for years and years. Most of the, like Mavis said, most of the merchants on my block have been there 14 years, 20 years, 25 years. I've been there 30 years. We really depended on the Howard Allen Show and the Delray Affair to help us get through the really slow summer months. And what's going to happen if we don't have any of those events in front of us anymore? You're going to see a lot of the merchants leave. They're just going to go out of the business because we can't get through without the special events, without having any of them in front of us anymore. So we really ask that you include us. There's never been a problem before going to the end of our block. And now, especially since there's many new restaurants, there's new merchants east of us, we get nothing from any of the special events. Like I said, not only do we get nothing, we get blocked off. So we would really, really hope that you would consider including us, at least in the Delray Affair. I know the Howard Allen Show is way gone because that's all the way west now. But the Delray Affair really does help us get through the summer. So I thank you for your consideration, and hopefully you'll help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Manuel. I am the founder and owner of the business Deeks and Delray at 6 and 2 Northeast 5th Avenue. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the sidewalk cafes and the enforcement of the ordinances that pertain to the sidewalk cafes not being exactly clear to me, as I've been to the city several times last week to figure out why code enforcement had told my employees verbally that the sidewalk cafe had been denied, yet I had not received anything on paper. And when I went to follow up, I still have yet to have explicit written denial. So I wanted to figure out what was going on there, but I think I'll speak more broadly here. Part of my presence here is to stand up for what I believe in this city, being a proud business owner and constituent. I found that the business-friendly procedures and environment for which I opened my business 4 years ago was inviting, and I was proud to represent Delray, going as far as including the name within my business. So I know we've seen a lot of turnover the past couple years, this year in particular, as things become more large scale in this city. I urge the commission to consider the things that make the city special, such as special events, the Delray Affair, the outdoor terrace seating for businesses that make the city desirable and actually different from other parts of South Florida as Florida becomes more popular and more washed in its culture. I am trying to fight what I would call the good fight here, and I see other business owners speaking up, because not only does it affect the culture, it affects our bottom dollar at the end of the year. And I see, as the climate gets more difficult to operate a business in, the business-friendly nature that once drew me to the city is disappearing, and I would like to focus on the culture being an important feature and draw for the city. I can speak on an event probably about 15 years ago now. As a high schooler, I came here to the city and I saw the Delray Affair. The street had been shut down from, I remember walking over the bridge headed west, and I saw the entire festival before me, and I thought, this is a beautiful city. I appreciate it, and it later inspired me to open up my own business here. As these topics get considered and possibly removed, I think we should consider the effect it will have on the culture for years to come and for other aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners alike. That's all. Thank you.
I love this town. Laura Simon with the Downtown Development Authority, and stories like that and Nico are what make our job at the DDA really proud to be here in Mavis and all of our longtime businesses. November is we celebrate Shop Small, and we celebrate our small businesses. We are 96% of our businesses are small. So the Saturday after Thanksgiving is Small Business Saturday. So we celebrate them all the time. But especially now, as that we're coming off like a very bad summer with a business climate, bad September, bad October with weather. So it's rough. It's rough out there. And these guys are working every day and every second to make a dollar. And every second and every hour that there's less, there's implications and seats are taken away or changes are made or these challenges with code enforcement, or with the city, it happens. It's part of business and it's part of operations. But we at the DDA, we're here to help. And I hear, that we're here. We can hand out things, sure, but be part of an education process. But we should be part of the process. And I would just hope that we can be as we go forward with this, because there's a lot at stake here for all of us as a community. And, when businesses are impacted, it is challenging. And I just, really encourage and second all that was said about the Delray Affair, being part of the family that started the Delray Affair and the why behind it, and it is why it's in April, why it falls after Easter. It's to extend the season. We are still very seasonal, and we have to do everything possible to do what we can to help our business community in all areas of the downtown. But that block itself is right there and was always part of it, and is close to 50 different businesses in that just one block, and it is impactful to them. So I just encourage you all to approve the extension for them specifically. I know it would help the event to spread it out a little bit more and help our community, because our residents and our visitors appreciate discovering all those spaces. So please, I encourage you to approve the extension. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Stephanie Immelman from the Delray Beach Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's produced the Delray Affair for the past 62 years. We did not request that the 500 block be included in 2025 only because we're precluded from doing so due to the new special events policy. That being said, the block has been included for 60 out of 62 years that we've held the event. And if you wanted us to include the block, it would be very easy for us to do so, and we would be happy to do it. But that direction and decision is going to have to come from you. And I think we're going to talk about it in a minute.
Sure we will. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, public comment is closed. We need a motion now to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's fine. Okay, we are now going to former item 6B, which is now item 7AA. 6B is the resolution. You want to read the resolution for us to?
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, approving an impact event known as the 63rd Annual Delray Affair to be held April 4th to the 6th, 2025, authorizing the closure of Atlantic Avenue and Swinton Avenue as more specifically described herein, authorizing the city manager to take all actions necessary to effectuate the intent of this resolution, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Okay.
is the city making a presentation?
I pulled it. It was on consent.
Right, it's on consent.
So there isn't a presentation, but I think, listen, I was on the commission when we stopped having that block open, and I think we had one commissioner who was definitely opposed to, but the issue was, is this a safety issue or not? And I think if we close Federal, right, you close at the 5, where's Laura? Or who can answer? Stephanie, can you? Thank you.
I'll come up here, sure.
Right now, we have the dump trucks, and we leave Federal going south open, correct?
Right.
How it was before was 6 Federal going north open, and the dump trucks were...
All right, so what it precludes, if you're coming south on Federal Highway, you can't turn left to
Correct,
go to the
obviously.
beach. You have to go around the block and turn
Yeah.
right. If you're coming north on Federal, you can turn right as usual. It was just if you're coming south on Federal, you can't make that left. The original reason that this took place was because I think it was 2022, the George Bush Bridge was stuck in an upright position.
Correct.
So we had to
Yeah.
pull everything off of that block within 48 hours for it to remain
So you're
open
saying
to the
Federal
beach.
stays open, but you just can't take the left, obviously, because it's or the
Yeah,
right, because
Federal
people are
Highway
in the
stays
street.
open.
Well, Federal
And it
stays open,
has.
but here's the issue. Here's the issue. The cost of the police to monitor that intersection, because it becomes a crosswalk.
Yes, it does.
They have to stop the traffic. There is a cost difference.
That's right.
And, if the Delray Affair is willing to pick up the additional costs for the police that are required to do that,
Wait, but are they already there on the corner? Just
they stopped. Now they have to stop traffic. They have to direct people to cross the street. It does become a true safety issue. People are going to be disadvantaged. They're disappointed when they have to stop when people are crossing anyway. They try to do it as quickly as they can with the red lights.
Yeah.
But the point is,
But it
there is
becomes a
additional
crosswalk
police
at that
presence
point.
there.
That's right. There
As
would
a
be.
result
We
of the
would
fact
incur
that it becomes a pedestrian crosswalk.
Yeah, we're expecting to incur those costs.
Okay, well,
Great.
because the biggest issue to me was the cost.
Because I didn't know
Additional
if they
cost.
were just positioning police
No,
elsewhere
they
or
have
if
to put
they're
them on
additional.
both sides. They have to do it's a.
They're there
Yeah,
anyway.
they're there.
Laura is saying that's what I'm saying.
They're all the way
I know
to that
I don't want to say they're
space.
standing there to make it sound offensive, but their presence is there anyway. So you're just asking them to, instead of be standing.
They go on both sides now.
Yeah, you may need an additional
They're typically
officer
not.
or
They're on
two.
both sides because they're directing traffic. Remember now, they're directing traffic also
Our
coming
officer will
from the east.
So, Mayor, so if this is going to amount to a waiver of the code, you need to have that discussion because I think the code prohibits some of this. The other issue is if this is something that you want to entertain, then I think it should go back through the DSMG process through CTAC because those are the people that are going to tell you how many more police officers you need, what the cost is going to be, and then the Delray Affair can determine if that's something that they want to incur, and then it'll go through DSMG. So because that's not what was considered by your lower level staff in the two processes,
Right.
and that's why this was on consent because it's approving the application as is. So if this is
Okay,
something that the
sorry.
commission wants to
Right.
consider, that's perfectly fine.
But we have to
I-
take it back through the process.
But I think it's got to go back through the process, and they can amend their application. You would just essentially be giving them the ability to make that application today, and then they'll go back through the process and let staff analyze this for you, and then it'll come back before you.
That's a good idea.
If you all would offer direction to that effect, the necessary process that Lynn just summarized, we're looking at the November experience, Mr. Orris.
Yes.
Given the November experience, we're looking at a final recommendation based on that process being executed to come back to you either December 10th or December 17th, which is still plenty of time, I believe, to get squared away in this regard.
Does
We've
this
already
event
updated the application.
close the bridge?
So now you just have to submit it.
I just have to submit it. I did it in anticipation.
Well, it's the DSMG process, so we got it. The city process
Yeah,
is
we
maybe.
knew-
go to the bridge.
We knew we'd have to
They're
go back to
familiar.
CTAC. We knew we had to go back and amend the
Well,
process.
So
there's sufficient time to go back through the process.
that's my
So
point.
with the consent to direction of the commission, that's what we're saying to do?
Yes, thank you.
There you go, Nancy.
I also want to put out there, I spoke to Chief Major, and he says there is no safety concern when doing this. So will there be a cost? I'm sure there
Well, it's
will.
no safety because
But
they
we
make sure there's no
expect
safety.
that. 'Cause they're good.
Because they got a bunch of people
Right,
out
because
there.
they're good.
No, we expect that. Okay.
Fine, perfect.
Direction.
We'll-
Thank you.
We'll see you in December. Oh, that's a song, isn't it?
So this
Oh, no,
will
Or
be.
thereabouts.
September. See you in September.
So the action you're going to take today is just to postpone this, and they'll submit a revised application?
Can we have a motion to postpone this?
Yes, moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Now we're at.
Yeah, can I ask maybe Mavis a quick question? How much lead time do you need? Because I know if the 500 block is included, the merchants are going to need to staff up a little bit and have extra merchandise. Are we giving you enough time to be able to do that?
December?
I know.
They're not till April. They
I come out of retail. I know how long it takes. I mean,
well, they're different than you. We were, you're at a wholly different level. Okay.
I feel good then. Thank you.
Okay, the item 7BB, which is the resolution approving the letter of engagement. Are you
Right,
satisfied
but I
with your-
believe the gentleman said we need to select a time frame. There's nothing in the letter to indicate what that is, so it's a period of time that we're having them review. So.
Obviously, we have a maximum of $60,000 is what we put in there?
It's not to engage. However, to Vice Mayor's point, you talked about different ranges going back 2 years, 6 months, whatever the case may be. So the application of our criteria in terms of time frame.
So
I mean, I don't know how to answer that question. There's different periods of time. I would say they should go back and do the course of 3 years. Can they do that in that?
He can.
Thank you, then I would say.
within the budget that we've given you?
At this particular point in time, and that's something we'll quite frankly have to manage. So we'll take a look at it given the resources being allocated and made available, and if some additional outcomes are necessary, is to be revisited once that time comes.
Thank you.
So if the direction, or if there's a consensus to go back 3-year period of time to that effect,
Fine with me.
Well,
so
at
be
least 2
it.
fiscal years, but I mean, if you
I'd
want
say do 3. Why not be?
that's
just-
almost 4 then, whatever.
And
Okay,
frankly,
that's okay.
given that time frame, it may trigger previous year's review because, as you articulated a few times, some of the matters go back well in
And
advance
listen,
of that
I'm
time
hoping it's
frame.
all perfect and it.
And it very well may be.
Thank you. I'm
You're welcome.
hopeful.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Would you want to read the resolution, 231-24?
Motion to approve number 231-24, approving letter of engagement with Citrin Cooperman Advisors LLC for the provisions of process and internal control assessment services for the course of 3 years.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We are now on 6.01, which is appealing item, there was a related to gunite, you
Yes.
said, right?
Yeah.
And that is now item 7CC. So you have
Correct. It
pulled
is
this?
6.01, and it is PZ 10-21 Gunite Yard, 135 North Congress Avenue.
So
Correct.
because this is an appeal, are you appealing this?
Yes.
Then this is an item that's appealed, so we need to now reschedule this
Correct.
for a meeting
In the future.
in the future to discuss this item,
So we
correct?
need a motion to appeal.
All right, so you want to have, the motion would be what?
Just motion to appeal the determination of the planning and zoning
So
board.
you make a motion to
Yes.
appeal the.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay, we're done that. 6F, which is now 7DD.
So that was mine. I wanted to find out about this pool safety grant. I guess this was the Parks and Rec, yeah, Parks and Rec. And I wanted to find out about, I think I read something about a drowning prevention program. I wanted to know how that works.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Sam Mita, Parks and Recreation Director. And Commissioner, you're spot on. This is a grant for $140,000 over the next 2 years to supply training, certification, and educational materials for drowning prevention, training, and education programs. Our aquatics department has gone into many of the schools and done programs. We've held water safety protocol days where we bring people in. We do a number of education programs at the pool, so we really do get involved. And just a reminder, there are the 2 pools. We have the other small pool over at the Delray Swim and Tennis Center that we do things there as well. So this will provide that type of funding for those drowning prevention programs.
And this is from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's no cost to our budget, it's money come from
No
the government.
matching, no reimbursable.
It's from our other tax
Okay.
dollars, great.
So this doesn't provide lower fees to entrance into the pool or free entrance into the pool? This is strictly for training?
No, and there maybe that's why there is some question, is we have a drowning prevention swimming program that does do voucher programs for young kids to learn how to swim. That is just a separate program altogether. This is for educational components.
Okay, would you want to read your thing and have a motion to approve?
Want me to do it?
Sure.
Got it. Resolution number 21724, motion to approve. Resolution number 217-24, approving a grant of $140,205 from the U.S. Consumer Protection Safety Commission for its pool safety grant program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's great.
Do you,
I'm
can I
sorry?
ask, do you have any, will you have a report about this, about who attended, how the program went? Do you have any kind of evaluation?
Absolutely, and we'll share that during and at the end, but that's all part of the requirement of the grant, is all of that documented training and numbers.
Thank you.
That's great. All right, thank you all.
Okay, the next one is 6G, which is now 7, I don't know, EE, wherever we are.
EE.
7 EE. This is also yours, Commissioner Prince.
Same thing. I just want to know about these grant programs. So this one is a Protect Child Passenger Safety Program.
It's a seat. I'm sorry.
There you are.
I just jumped in. It's a seatbelt program. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. We're actually getting money from FDOT, $25,000 to use towards seatbelt safety in our city. So
how do you do that?
we apply for the grant.
No, but how do you help the
how do you
seatbelts?
how do you promote the program?
We use our traffic unit, and we go out after hours. That's the requirement after your normal workday. Then you go out after hours, and then we run traffic. We conduct traffic enforcement anywhere and all over the city, and anyone that's not wearing a seatbelt gets a citation. It could be for speeding. You pull somebody over, and then we could see you don't have a citation. It could be any kind of a stop, running a red light, running a stop sign. But as long as we observe them without their seatbelt on, we're able to utilize.
So there's no education with this.
There is. Once you get the grant
Once
money,
you get a ticket,
there is
it is.
100%. There's an educational component to it. As part of the grant, the requirement is there is an educational component to it. There's a reporting component, an educational component, and an enforcement component in order to meet the requirements of the grant. So we always apply for those traffic grants because we try to find ways to obviously save the taxpayers any kind of additional funds whenever we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we have? We're going to need. Could you read the resolution?
Sure. Motion to approve application to and award of Florida Department of Transportation (FDOT) 2024-25 Occupant Protection Child Passenger Safety Program grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Great.
Thank you.
So we are finished with those. We are now going to our regular agenda, 7A. And do I need to leave on this?
You need to leave and state on the record that you do have a conflict of interest on this item.
I'm stating for the record that I have a conflict of interest on this item. I was the original agent for this project. I am no longer doing the stuff for them, but because I was the original agent, I have been, it's best that I recuse myself and pass the gavel to.
You don't have to pass it.
This is symbolic passing.
I know, thank you. Okay, so 7A is just an appealable that we pulled because the mayor has a connection
This
to
would
the
normally be on consent.
applicants. So 7A is a report of appealable development application action for Fifth Avenue Townhomes from October 23rd, 2024. And our motion just passes it through then at this point, or do we deny it?
No. So if
Deny the appeal.
if no one is interested in appealing this item, you can just move to receive and file the report for action as made by the Site Plan and Review and Appearance Board.
Okay, does anybody have any concerns with this, want to appeal it? Okay, then would someone make a motion?
Yeah. A motion to receive this file report for action on the development application request from October 23rd, 2024.
Can we have thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mayor, you can return. Thank you.
Great. We now have, thank you very much. We now have a 7B, which is nomination for appointment to the Delray Beach Housing Authority. for a sit appointment for one regular member to serve. It's an unexpired term, so it's only till March 2025, and this will be made by Commissioner Markert.
I would like to nominate Andrea Kaiser.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Now we have an appointment to the Historic Preservation Board, and this nomination is for one qualified member to serve a term ending August 31st, 2025, and this will be made by Commissioner Burns.
Okay, I looked this up, and we already have 5 people on here who are qualified. So is this qualified required?
You can pick from any.
You can pick, you're
Okay.
entitled to wherever you want to go on the
Okay, I
list.
would like to nominate Mr. Ezra Craig.
Do we have a second?
I got a second over here.
Yep, I got one over here too. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, okay. I think he's on the board now, isn't he? I'm not sure, He was.
Renew.
We're now in the section for public hearings and second readings. Would you like to read ordinance 20-24?
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, amending the land development regulations of the City of Delray Beach Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 4 zoning regulations, Article 4.6 supplemental district regulations, Section 4.6.9 off-street parking regulations, to amend the requirements for parking for general commercial uses to include limited indoor dining establishments, and to clarify the parking requirement for restaurants and standalone bars. Amending Appendix A, definitions, to include a definition for limited indoor dining establishment, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, authority to codify, and providing an effective date. And this is second reading, public hearing.
Great.
Good evening, Anthea Geniotis, Development Services Director for the record. I'll just give you a brief overview of what this ordinance does. It's basically amends Section 469, which is the off-street parking regulations, to establish to adopt parking regulations for establishments that would be considered limited indoor dining. There's a definition, so we know exactly what that means. Ultimately, I know, right? This amendment, I'm like, vote for it. No, this amendment started because the code discusses that we should use a general commercial parking requirement, which is less than a restaurant parking requirement, when we're dealing with things, and it literally says sandwich shop, deli. I mean, there's the implication that these are a sandwich shop, you're walking up and ordering a sandwich and then taking it somewhere else to eat. But, you know, we've all been to Starbucks, which is a coffee shop, and there's tables and chairs in there. And so the code has just been really, it's not making that interpretation. You can't really rely on the state licensing anymore, because once you're preparing a certain amount of food, it tips into other things. And so rather than, utilize lovely descriptions, we really want to put a metric in the code to say when something shifts to the full restaurant parking requirement and when something only has a couple tables and chairs inside and it's predominantly, it's operating at less than a full service restaurant. Obviously, an ice cream shop, clearly, like Sloan's or something like that we have on the app, clearly tips into we wouldn't want to, we would rather park it at a retail general commercial level. But how that gets implemented over time, if they pull tables and chairs in, then code enforcement's kind of pushing them out, because the distinction is really that you're not serving customers on site. Then you can throw in sidewalk cafes, which we don't park at all. So it just gets a little messy. So what we want to do is establish a clear parameter that if you are a restaurant and you have that license because of the way you're making food, or a retail establishment where food or beverages are prepared, processed, or assembled on site, then you can have no more than 8 seats inside, whether you're having 2 4-tops, 8 bar stools, whatever you have. If you've been like to the Wix custard shop at the end of sort of Pineapple Grove Way, there's a couple chairs in there, and I just pretend I don't see them while I sit in them and eat ice cream. So this will just make it a little more flexible. It's going to support our smaller businesses. It's not that they don't have to provide parking. It's that they're providing they're using a lower ratio, because they're really not operating at the level of a full service restaurant. So, yep, there's this type of stuff. The same thing would happen with outdoor use area. So this distinction between sidewalk cafe and outdoor use area. Years ago, any sort of al fresco dining was permitted using sidewalk cafes. Sidewalk cafes are really when you're using part of the city's right of way. If it's on your own property and you have a big, patio in the back or the side where you're serving, that should be parked, right? And that's on your property. It's not going to leave because we put in a new parking lot or on-street parking, or we turn in a turn lane and then you're not as many tables and chairs fit. That's part of why we don't really ask sidewalk cafes to park, because they are in essence somewhat temporary as the city changes rules and our right-of-ways change, more trees get planted, something gets taken away. We don't put that burden on those property owners. But if it's on your own property, it gets parked. So this change, even if they had a big patio, that area would still just use you're still just an ice cream shop, sandwich shop, something smaller. It makes it really clear, and you can see if you really want to study the code, like these deli sandwich shops exceptions under restaurant were sort of called out, and so I think it's a lot more simple just to say you can have a little bit of seating inside before we trip you. The difference is using throughout most of the city 4.5 spaces per 1,000 rather than 12 spaces per 1,000. Downtown, it adjusts a little bit differently. Retail is only 2 per 1,000. Some restaurant is 6 per 1,000. Other areas along Atlantic are 12. But the gist of it is it's a slightly lower ratio. This is, I think, a good example of this over the Bridge Cafe, and I didn't know he was going to be here to speak, but it's a great example, right? Because here's Sidewalk Cafe. It's not really parked. It could change. This is striped. Maybe we're going to add more curbs someday, and there'd be more space for tables and chairs. Things change. There is outdoor dining in between the buildings here, but there's no indoor seating. So if this is parked as retail, because yes, does he have a seating? Sure. Does it change based on how hot it is and if it rains? I'm sure it does. So this would be the worst best case scenario, where there's an outdoor patio parked at a lower rate. You have a business that doesn't have any indoor seating, where now a couple of two tops could go in if it's raining, and it wouldn't sort of raise code enforcement because now you're a restaurant because you have seating, making you full service. And that's the only thing I could think to show you in terms of all the different types of dining we have downtown. This just makes it just a very clear line for everyone. So the only finding that you make when we pass LDR amendments is that it's consistent with goals, objectives, and policies, and these types of things make it a little bit easier for our businesses, particularly our small businesses. Planning and Zoning Board heard the amendment on June 17th, and they voted 5-0 to recommend approval. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public who wish to get up and speak, please come to the lectern, name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Anthony Gervasi, 204 South Seacrest Circle, also co-owner of the Bridge Cafe on Atlantic Avenue. I can't stress enough how important it is to have this pass. I'm caught in limbo right now with an application that's been pending for 65 days because they don't know if to call me a restaurant, to call me a sidewalk cafe, to call me walk-up retail. I'm losing tens of thousands of dollars because I'm paying rent, I'm paying insurance, I have space acquired to give us a little bit more walk-up retail to serve our customers better, not even to include indoor seating. I never even asked for that. But they don't know how to classify me because of the parking issue. I'm going from 600 square feet to, that's all our kitchen is, to adding another 650 or 700 square feet for walk-up retail, and I can't get approved. So this is extremely important, not only to me, but to also other small businesses. I live and die by the weather. I live and die by the sun. I live and die by downtown walking people, by the walking traffic. I have no parking anywhere around me. There's no parking on our block. We lost how many parking spots across the street with the construction going on. So to say that I need to have parking, where? There's no parking anywhere that side of the bridge. Even crossing over the bridge, the closest parking area is going to be near the ocean. So this is extremely important, not only for me, but other small businesses in town, especially small shops where we live and die by walking traffic. So I ask for your approval today and to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the,
Good evening again. My name is Nicholas Manuel. I'm representing Deeks and Delray again. I think what was said before me brings up a good point that a lot of what draws us to this area is the nice weather, especially this time of year. We're expecting a lot more business to be experiencing uncertainty when the permit expired June 30th, and now we're in early November, and to be I pride myself on trying to work with the city to meet a reasonable balance here. I've asked the city to come out and I guess specifically planning and zoning to define the design constraints if I'm not compliant, and I still have yet to hear about that. So the timing, every day counts. Every good day that the weather passes by where we're not able to capitalize on the opportunity that we have been for years, and actually built the staffing and built our entire business infrastructure around existing business conditions. It gives me pause and to decide, should I expand further into this area as we meet resistance with the growth? I'm confident that we're going to find a balance here, and I want to make myself available on behalf of my own business but other businesses. So I'm here tonight to speak on not only the value that is added from the flexibility, but also the value that is added from capitalizing on amenities that make our city different. Like I said, outdoor bistro cafes and the overall aesthetic and desirability of a city that has such amenities. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Laura Simon, DDA. I just want to thank Anthea and her team for pushing this through. This started, I think, probably 4 years ago when we were faced with some challenges with some of the smaller establishments not having, that were opening up, like Deeks or even the bakery, Amar Bakery, which wanted indoor dining, wanted 2 seats, and you couldn't do it without parking it, and it was a frustration. So I really am glad that we're here. And the sooner we can say yes, the better. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
For the record, I do want to clarify a couple of things. This started long before the Over the Bridge Cafe then went to expand and sort of hit this roadblock. So I don't want you to think that he hit something and in 65 days we pushed out an amendment. We were already working on this, as Ms. Simon said, because it's just been an ongoing issue. Just in general, the restaurant categories, there is certainly more to discuss about the restaurants and the bars downtown, but this was a sort of a simple one that we thought could help a lot of people. Now, in terms of Deeks, what I believe the gentleman is referring to is the Sidewalk Cafe ordinance, which is different. In terms of the clearance in 2017 changed from 5 feet to 6 feet because now we're so successful, we need to make sure people can pass each other on the street, and that is impacting some of the sidewalk cafes when they come in for renewals. So we will continue to work with them. However, for his coffee shop, which before couldn't have had stools or chairs or anything like that, as he expands, he can do so knowing that if it starts to rain, 8 seats inside is not a problem. So whether it's going to solve his specific issue or not, it makes that type of business a little more flexible.
Right. I mean, I think this is I'm glad you're making this change. But Commissioner Long?
Yeah, great work, Anthea. I know you guys spent quite a bit of time on this. I'm glad we finally gotten here. I use this term a lot, but to me this is a no-brainer. Why would we move forward with this? It's harder and harder for small businesses to survive in Delray, given how expensive everything is, and anything we can do that makes sense to help them out, and to me this is just common sense. So I'm certainly in favor of passing this tonight. And I go to Deeks a lot. I love it. I'm like addicted to the coffee. I've talked to Nico quite a bit, and I know he really does bend over backwards to work with the city, and I want to encourage folks that really go out of their way to work with us. I want to encourage him to keep doing that. So if we can like expedite making sure we get him some additional clarity, whatever he needs. It seems like he hasn't gotten the feedback he needs. It doesn't seem like it's a super complicated issue. I'm just hoping that we can ensure that he gets the feedback that he needs quickly, if he still needs some after tonight.
Commissioner Marker.
Anthea, great job on this. This is a no-brainer. I'm definitely a yes on this.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes, thank you, Anthea, for the great work that you do and continue. And I'm just so, it just boggles my mind as to why things take so long. I'm learning.
It started as a much bigger ordinance, and then we just were like, well, we know everyone's okay for this piece. Yes. Let's just bring this piece.
I know, it's piece by piece, but we're getting there. But yes, anything to do, to support our small businesses. So many of our small retailers close downtown, and I just hate to see someone have to close down because we can't work with them to make sure that they stay open. So I'm in support of it as well.
Commissioner Gasol.
Yes, I'm also in support, so I will make a motion.
Oh, no, don't I get to go?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said in the beginning you were in support. I
was, but I'm just.
Oh, you're going to add to that. Okay.
That was just a flippant comment.
My watch keeps telling me to stand up and move.
As I remember, I still call for the vote.
You do.
I love Deeks. I go to your place for breakfast. But when I was being raised by the nuns, if I ever brought something into the class, they said, "Do you have enough to share with the class?" You showed us this ice cream at the beginning, and the very least you could have done is have a sample brought for the entire room. May we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve ordinance number 20-24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Ordinance 8B.
Ordinance number 0524, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, amending the land development regulations of the City of Delray Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Flood Damage Control Districts and Coastal Construction, Article 10.1, Administration, Section 10.1.2, Applicability, to reference the most recently adopted flood insurance study, amending Section 10.1.7, Variances and Appeals, to replace references to the Board of Adjustment for Appeals to Floodplain Management Regulations with the appropriate reviewing body for consistency with Chapter 2 and updating the Florida Building Code Chapter Citation for historic structures, amending Article 10.2 definitions, Section 10.2.2 definitions by deleting the definitions for existing manufactured home park or subdivision, expansion to an existing manufactured home park or subdivision, and new manufactured home park or subdivision for consistency with state flood plan requirements for all manufactured homes, and by amending the definition for coastal high hazard area, historic structure, and market value to be consistent with industry standards, and amending Article 10.3 flood resistant development, Section 10.3.4 manufactured homes to create a uniform elevation for all manufactured homes in a flood hazard area, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, authority to codify, and providing an effective date. And this is also second reading, public hearing.
Okay, good evening, Anthea Geniotis Development Services, and I'm actually joined here by Missy Barletta, the Director of Public Works. She's going to help me with this one. I might help her with the next one. They're both. So we are about to adopt new FEMA maps. We're required to do this. We have a deadline to do this. And there are certain reevaluations of our regulations that we were asked to make. I don't think anything that we're about to show you is a significant shift. It's more of a clarification of the FEMA regulations that are about to take effect. So as you know, we are part of a community rating system, which is a voluntary incentive program that encourages us to use good floodplain management practices, and in exchange, it affects the rates that all of our residents or citizens are charged for flood insurance. So the goals, of course, are to reduce and avoid flood damage to properties, which, again, like I said, all of these, we actually get audited in the building department and in the public works department for the projects that we've either reviewed or done to see how they comply with national flood standards every year. We currently have a class of 6. So there have been, so I didn't realize these changed like this. So it's just, usually I'm like, okay. So the goal is 1 is the best, but as long as you are 8 or better, you see a benefit to your community. We have to adopt a rule that enforces at least 1 foot of freeboard for all residential structures. We In essence, the Florida Building Code does that automatically. FEMA sets the level. The Florida Building Code requires an additional foot. We, as a city, offer people up to another foot if they would like to do that without it sort of counting against their overall building height. And in some cases, we would require 18 inches higher. So in general, we're pretty consistent already. Where we needed to make some adjustments was how our Chapter 10 refers to manufactured housing. Our language sort of assumes that it's a mobile home park. You know, it really hasn't kept up with that individual manufactured houses would be coming into the city as well. I don't think a lot of people realize this. You can make a house out of anything you want as long as you can meet the Florida Building Code, the windstorm, and tie it to the appropriate foundation. So the language before you basically, you know, gets rid of this idea that it's in a mobile home park, or, you know, that it just condenses into language that applies to all manufactured homes, whether there's a collection of them or just one, and it meets those new requirements, or it uses the language that makes FEMA happy. So that's what we're doing. As a result, we're updating definitions. And then the board that actually would hear any appeals from the regulations we have is the Board of Adjustment, and it clarifies that, or the Historic Preservation Board for Historic Properties. So there's a little bit of language that is also cleaned up just as floodplain issues are addressed in the city, which board sees them. That's pretty much the gist of the ordinance. If you have any questions, whatever you have, it has to be adopted by December 10th. So.
This is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this matter, please come up, give your name and address. You will each have 3 minutes. Seeing none, public comment, if the public hearing is over, to the commission.
I got nothing.
Nothing.
Nada.
I'll make a motion when you're ready.
By manufactured homes, you're referencing specifically, because there are some prefab homes that come that are really 2 stories tall, and meet Florida building codes, and those are under your definition of manufactured home.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we would typically use a phrase in Florida, pre-manufactured homes, that you put it together, you put parts of it together, and then you're
correct. That's what they do.
They
drop off the parts and you put them together, but they're real houses.
Yeah, FEMA has sort of adjusted some of the language around those types of buildings, and they just want to be clear that ultimately the same elevation requirements that apply to houses constructed on the site are the same. So that's ultimately what it's doing.
We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve ordinance number 05-24.
Second.
Thank you.
05-24. Oh yeah, there you are. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adopted. 8C.
Ordinance number 28-24, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Delray Beach, Florida, amending the land development regulations of the City of Delray Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, zoning regulations, Article 4.6, supplemental district regulations, Section 4.6.16, landscape regulations, subsection I, minimum maintenance requirements, to remove existing fertilizer use regulations and to create a new subsection J, fertilizer management, to establish new fertilizer use regulations and associated definitions pursuant to the requirements of Florida statutes, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date, and further purposes. And this too is the last second reading.
Great. This is again a public hearing, second reading. Missy, you're on.
Good evening, Missy Barletto, Public Works Director, assisted by the illustrious Director of Development Services, Anthea Giannetis. So this particular ordinance is a bit of housekeeping based on the requirement by the Florida Legislature. In June of 2009, the city is required to adopt a fertilizer ordinance for any area that has an impacted water body, and that was required to be done by 2013. In 2013, the city did not have any impacted water bodies. In 2016, Lake Ida was actually placed on that list for 3 parameters, which are the actual biology of the lake, chlorophyll A, which is created by plants, and for excess nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen, which are found in fertilizers. So the ordinance that we've brought before you is very similar to the one that the Board of County Commissioners passed on October of 2012. The county required all municipalities with urban areas to adopt this same ordinance. The city participates with a group of other municipalities and Palm Beach County in a national pollution discharge elimination permit that is called an MS4 permit, which is basically regulates the water quality of all of the things that enter our stormwater system, which would include fertilizers. So, well, I already covered this part. Hang on. Okay, so some of the impacts, if you want to jump to the next one, some of the impacts of excessive nutrients on a water body are algae blooms, fish kills, health issues due to high nitrates, reduced light penetration. All of these things can combine to lower real estate value, to create odor issues, and to contribute to contamination of the aquifer, which is where our drinking water comes from. So this particular fertilizer ordinance regulates the proper use of fertilizer by commercial applicators. It requires training and license for applicators. It establishes prohibited application periods. It identifies fertilizer buffer zones. It specifies application rates and methods, identifies specific exemptions, and provides for enforcement and penalties for noncompliance.
Nancy, can I just ask you a quick question? You said that, so this only applies to fertilizers applied by commercial applicators? So not me who owns my own home?
Thank you, my hero. Yes, this applies to commercial applicators, and it applies to everyone during certain times of the year.
Gotcha, okay.
So all commercial applicators of fertilizer within Palm Beach County have to carry in their possession at all times when applying fertilizer evidence of their certification from the Florida Department of Agriculture. Fertilizer applications are prohibited during any time that there is a flood watch or warning, anytime there's a tropical storm watch or warning, or a hurricane watch, anytime where we have a good expectation of a heavy rainfall that the fertilizer applied to the lawn at that point in time is just going to wash away into the stormwater system and into the receiving water body anyway. So any time is prohibited by that, and fertilizer cannot be applied within 10 feet of a receiving water body, or 3 feet if there is a deflector shield or drop spreader is used of any pond, stream, water body, lake, canal, or wetland. So if you live on the intracoastal waterway and you have a seawall that comes up, that's a deflector shield. You can apply fertilizer to within 3 feet of that seawall, but if you do not have a seawall, you have just a riprap shoreline, then your distance would be 10 feet. It applies to any newly planted turf or landscape plants for a period of 60 days. You may fertilize in that zone for a period of 60 days, but you have to wait 30 days to start fertilizing. You plant, you wait 30 days, and then you have 60 days in which you can fertilize. Anytime, some of this is just plain common sense. If you spill fertilizer, you have to clean it up immediately. You cannot sweep or wash it, or blow it into any stormwater drains, ditches, conveyance, or water bodies that would lead directly to a receiving water body. And no grass clippings or debris or vegetative material can intentionally be washed or blown into stormwater drains, ditches, conveyance, water bodies, wetlands, sidewalks, or roadways. And if you have any questions.
That was pretty thorough.
Well, this is a public hearing, so if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this matter, please come to the front, give your name and address, and you will each have 3 minutes. Seeing none, public comment is closed. To the commission.
I got nothing. Great work.
Motion to approve ordinance number
Can I-
2824. Oh, I thought you were giving me
No,
the
I'm
lift.
just, I
to
was
do
saying,
it.
I was giving you an opportunity to speak.
Oh, I thought you
And you're
wanted
good
me
at
to
it,
do
so,
it.
you know.
I'm pushing this along for you
I'm
tonight.
moving, I just have one quick question.
Go.
I've seen some of that green stuff in the canal in between Boca Raton and Delray Beach. Okay? Does Boca have the same ordinance, and why do they seem to have that problem down there?
There are a lot of things that can cause algae to grow in a canal. Just because you see algae in a canal or something that looks green doesn't necessarily mean that it's a toxic algae or that it's caused by excess nutrients. There are many different kinds of naturally occurring algae that are an important part of the food web.
Gotcha. No comment?
No comments.
Any comment? Ms. Casal, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance number 28-24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 9, first readings, we have none. Number 10A, to the city manager, discussion regarding content for the November 19th opioid policy workshop meeting.
We already began this dialogue during the
did.
early part of the meeting, so this is simply to prepare accordingly. During the October 15th, 2024 regular city commission meeting, consensus was offered to have a workshop meeting for this particular day. We originally contemplated about a 1-hour visit. However, again, we've had this discussion a few times to the point of a couple of you all earlier today. However, it's been quite dynamic. I've received individual thoughts and input since that time, and therefore I thought it would be productive for us to have this discussion so that we can all be on accord. Right now, Assistant City Manager Jeff Orris will be the lead kickoff person in terms of presentation with whatever format we go with. But again, given the ideas and thoughts haven't been shared at this time, I'd like to hear from the commission so that we can prepare adequately.
I'm just, what are we actually doing at that? Because have we formed our committee yet? What are we doing at this meeting? Because this will be the third or fourth time we've
Right,
discussed
so
this.
there has not been a committee formed as of yet, number
Okay.
one. So that will be part of the direction in terms
I
of what
thought
that
we
looks
already
like.
gave that direction
You've
at the
offered-
last workshop.
You've offered direction that we proceed in that regard. However, as I've mentioned, it's evolved. There are some additional ideas and thoughts that's come down the pike, most recently last week, and therefore I thought it would be productive because we have this meeting
All
today,
right, can I
November
just
4th.
be really frank because it's 7:12. Is this revelation the mayor's email?
Not only that, no, that's one.
Okay, what are the other revelations? Let's just talk about them now because here's the problem, and this is no disrespect to you because you're having an afterthought. We all have a workshop. It's like the second on the subject. We all leave the workshop with direction for this committee to be formed. The committee is going to go out and find the organizations that fall within the guidelines to benefit from this money, which isn't a lot of money, mind you. We're spending a ton of time talking about a small amount of money. And we were going to then at some point be presented with the various organizations in the city that could benefit from this money based on this committee's recommendations.
Which would
Now-
be part of the 19th as well.
Well, we don't have a committee. Part of what? We're not moving forward. We're just circling. And it's starting to get extremely frustrating. So the mayor put out a very thoughtful email
Only because on the October 15th meeting, they said, we're going to have a workshop on the 19th.
But why?
Well, I'm just saying, I wrote it down, just like I wrote down
I
when he
know,
said we're
but
doing
I
this
don't
next
even
work.
understand. We
it
keep
down.
on having the same discussions.
And I've
Can
had
I
individual
explain
discussions
my
with several
interpretation?
about different thoughts.
Commissioner Burns?
So I thought that we were having this meeting on the 19th where we were going to invite different providers and agencies in to come in to introduce themselves so that we could then choose from these people a committee, a task force. That's what I thought.
That was my understanding as well, that we were going to be offering direction in the formation of this committee, because we haven't done that. Let's form a committee. And then I've had meetings, probably the same ones you have had, Ms. Burns, with people like Palm Health, who want to be included in this committee, and I want to hear their case.
Right.
I think that case should be presented to everyone, because they made a compelling case to be part of this this committee that we're forming. So
And-
that was my impression of what
Well,
we're doing
I'm fine.
here.
All I'm saying, the meeting, because we had said we were going to invite Palm Health in to come in and speak and do all the, my only, if you want to know the truth, the impetus behind that trying to schedule was I wanted to move the subject matter along without a lot of presentations, to be honest, and I made that point. Because staff has already presented this at least 3 times.
At least 3.
And I don't need to hear it again. I'm sure it's your brilliant thing. I can probably recite most of it back to you.
I thought we were going to be focused on the committee in this.
That's the only reason
But
I
we
put
were
out this,
focused
which
on
is
the
why I said
committee
I
at the
want to
last
limit
workshop.
staff to 10 minutes, and then the rest of the body of it would be this. So how we break it up?
This is a ton of time spent on that. We at that workshop, and I believe you two gentlemen were not present, so forgive me. We had the whole discussion about the committee, and we all agreed on the committee that was presented. You were talking about an officer. There was a whole list of individuals that were going to be on that committee. We discussed that at the last workshop.
I talked about the types that could come before you.
types,
Excuse me,
yeah.
Jeff Forrest, Assistant City Manager. My intent for the next meeting was to bring forward to you a recommendation on the positions on a committee. You know, we have a representative of the police department, representative of the fire department, representative of mental health, representative of the medical community, a drug addiction specialist, those sort of things. And then on top of that, we were going to bring to you a recommended plan of expenditure for the dollars that we have right now. I've been working with police and fire on that.
But those people were going to introduce themselves to us so that we would know who they were.
Again,
Those
I just
professionals.
sent out something because I wanted to move
I
this
just
along.
find this remarkably frustrating because we're spending a ton of time talking in circles and getting nothing done, and it's $80,000.
I mean, no offense. What else is new? We plan a workshop at every meeting.
I'm
to
so
me, this is
tired
a
of a
continuation
workshop to
of.
nowhere.
That's why I said I was planning to make it a special meeting.
Oh, because
I wanna
then
be
we
able to
won't
vote on
call
it
it
and
a
get finished with it.
workshop.
To me, this is a continuation of the process. I don't know why we keep talking about it. Like,
I want this. I concur with Commissioner Casal. This is a small amount of money. It's important to.
but
a lot
it's
of
to set
groups.
up a committee ongoing, so it's not just this one amount of money. It's going forward, so it is important. I think.
Rather
I don't-
rather
I'm
than
not
looking
saying
ba-
it's dis-
rather than looking back, though, let's name the committee.
That's what we were supposed to be doing, and then the plan changed. Well, we can't
know.
name it right here, sitting here. That's
Well,
not
but
what we can do.
We can set a date when we're going to do that.
They have a date.
Then let's just get the committee named by then and move forward.
That would be November 19th. So if I may, ladies and gentlemen, there's one thought. And again, speaking to others individually, you all articulated the basis of my individual dialogue with you all since then. So again, we're here November 4th to prepare for November 19th. One suggestion is for a special meeting, given the opportunity for specific action to be taken for once and for all so that we can move forward adequately. So that may necessitate a little bit more than an hour. When we first offered a commitment for a workshop meeting to take place November 19th, the initial concept was on a 1 hour visit, 4 o'clock till 5 o'clock, right before the 5 o'clock regular meeting. Given the associated dynamics, is there an interest, given the special meeting consideration, would there be an interest to meet a little bit earlier than 4 o'clock? Say 3:30, for example, 3 o'clock, for example, whatever the case might be.
To whatever time, but I think it's important that you canvass each one of the commissioners individually to get their ideas of what they would like this committee to look like. You know, I mean, I know you've
But
mentioned.
then we're going to come back to another meeting where it's going to be a whole.
No, they'll put together.
We already have a
We
meeting
already
planned
did
to put the
that.
committee
Why
together.
can't we just invite the people to come and introduce themselves? Someone from these professional organizations to come. We want to hear from Palm Health. We want to hear from others. And then at that point, we can say, oh, let's put
Because you're the
this
one on
person
that county task force.
I am.
You must know these people.
I know some of them, but I want everybody else to know them too. I don't get to appoint them on my own.
And when we discussed this October 15th in preparation for November 19th, that was the impetus to do so as well. So that was part of the mix. So I'll be more than happy to have the Office of the City Manager prepare accordingly in that regard, given the associated dynamics and moving parts and the opportunity to consider a special meeting outcome to achieve a cogent direction. I would recommend that we begin at 3 o'clock.
Whatever the commission's think. I just want to. I just don't want to revisit this again.
You sure? I feel like we should do it 4 more times.
I think we should do it 4 more times. But you can chair those meetings. I'll be out
Yeah,
of town.
oof.
See, I'm on
It'll
that.
be fast.
It takes so long. I've been asking for this forever.
So
anyway.
So is that consensus, special meeting 3 o'clock?
Yes, 3 o'clock, fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What is Mr. Orris is going to come to that meeting with, can we talk about what is exactly going to happen at the meeting so we know we're going to be productive?
Again, there are 2 things I was intending to bring forward. One is a definitive structure for the committee.
Okay.
And I can probably share with you right now if you want to talk about it.
No, I think you should
what I
share
was
that in
looking at
email
doing.
with us this week so we can all look at it. If you don't
As
mind.
well as bringing forward a spending plan for the money that we have at hand right now,
Okay.
which I have worked with police and fire on what is the best way, what will affect our residents. We've talked about some training for our first responders.
Could
as
you
well.
email that to all of us then?
I do not have that finalized yet. We're
Okay,
still
when
working
you
on
do?
some of that program, but
Okay.
certainly we can share that.
Thank you, I
as soon
appreciate it.
as it's created.
And I want to make sure that the spending is actually what the purpose of the funds are for, because you and I have had this conversation, and there were certain items that were discussed that are not part of the education process.
And never intended to move forward, but they were discussed.
Well, I
and we put
understand
them
it, but I
together.
just remember some of the things, they were not there, and I want to have the purpose of the funds, there's a specific guideline of what this fund's supposed to be used for. And,
Yes,
and
got to get that right.
that I want to just make sure that the funds are getting used to maximize the benefit for the wellness or the drug, prevention and use and everything that it's designed to do. So that was my only. I don't want it to be a wish list for.
Well, once we get the task force, they're going to be the professionals that outline for us
Right.
all of those things that will go under those guidelines, and then we can say yay or nay.
Right.
So then you don't need the spending for this year? Like,
No,
do you
we
want to
do.
reserve that for the task force?
The
Because there's
stu-
nothing, because what Mr. Orris is bringing forward is how staff proposes to spend the money that we currently have in the bank account. There's no requirement that you have to spend this money. You just have to report what
We
you've
are going to want to
received.
spend it, but I think it's up to
Eventually.
the task
Why don't
force.
we let him email it to us and then we'll
Yeah, why don't you just
discuss
email
it at the workshop or
I think you
whatever
also need to
special
adopt
meeting?
the policy too, Mayor. I don't
Right.
think that policy has ever been adopted.
Okay.
So that would be part of the mix for November 19th. In the format of a special meeting, you can actually adopt policies, direction, all of it. So once and for all, we'll be all set.
Thank you.
So I will make arrangements for a special meeting Tuesday, November 19th, 3 p.m., and we go from there right before your regular meeting, 5 p.m. I have one other item, ladies and gentlemen, and this is on a very light and happy note. For the second consecutive year, you asked me to do this. I was giving you the invitation.
Because I didn't want to do it.
Okay,
You
well,
paid him $10. I watched
She
you
did
pay him
not.
to
I
do
did
this.
not pay him anything.
Not
I'll
a
get
dime,
an
not a
OYG
drop, not a
investigation
speck.
in a minute.
She did bribe you with a piece of pizza, which you didn't have, though.
It was gluten-free.
which I didn't get. So,
Gluten-free pizza, even.
so in any event, the Delray Beach Youth Tennis Foundation hosts an annual Center Court Under the Stars event. It's a pro-am event and tennis competition over at the Delray Beach Tennis Center. For the second consecutive year, the competition involves leadership or representatives from the city of Boca Raton and the city of Delray Beach. Pleased to share, for the second consecutive year, the city of Delray Beach was victorious in bringing home the traveling cup. So we're really pleased
Traveling.
about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Casal.
So
Work my butt off. for that trophy.
2023, I actually participated. 2024, I had individual discussions with Vice Mayor Casal.
Yes.
Would you like to participate? And of course, she hammed up and decided that she would like to. So I said, that's quite all right.
Saying it so.
So
I was pretty awesome.
between
if I say
myself
so
in
myself.
2023, yourself in 2024, 2 years in a row, we were victorious. However,
And let's
Chief
not forget
Major
our amazing
Brett Gordon,
police officer.
Officer Brett Gordon, who
Such a good
accompanied me
tennis
last
player.
year, accompanied Vice Mayor Casal
It
this
was
year.
amazing.
And 2 professional tennis athletes, Kevin Anderson, Cyril, and others, who made this possible, but we're really pleased. So this will be on display at the Delray Beach Tennis Center. On my way home in a little while, I will make a personal stop to make sure it's handsomely displayed accordingly. So Vice Mayor Casal and Officer Gordon, congratulations, and we look forward to taking it again, third year in a row in 2025. Thank you.
I'm training now.
I yield at this time, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay,
Thank you.
any comments by the city attorney? No, comments by the city commission. Would you like to go first, Mr. Hall?
Would I? So I'll keep it quick. I wanted to give you guys a quick TPA update.
Good.
So back, we just had a meeting this week where we adopted the 2025 Transportation Alternatives Program guidelines, and I'll go into why that's pertinent to us, because we adopt a lot of stuff. It's not always relevant to Delray. So you guys probably remember I referenced back in April we had a walking audit on Northeast 4th Street. I had it sent out to you guys right before the meeting. I don't know if anyone had time to look at it. I'll just go through a couple of the bullet points, which are the recommendations that just came through last week based on that audit. Upgrade cracked and heaved sidewalks, ADA push buttons, implement high visibility crosswalks, work with PBC to straighten the western crosswalk leg of Swinton Ave, work with FEC Railroad Brightline to create a dynamic envelope inclusive of signing and pavement, marking upgrades and flexible delineators, create curb extensions, adding shade by removing eastbound right turn lane from Northeast 4th Street to southbound Northeast 2nd Ave, evaluate adding marked crosswalk to Northeast 3rd, close sidewalk gaps between Northeast 5th and Northeast 7th, consider the addition of shared lane markings only with the addition of traffic calming measures, add pedestrian scaled lighting along the corridor where feasible to provide visibility to vulnerable road users during low light conditions, consider widening the existing sidewalks to match land use context, study corridor-wide visibility of roundabouts or traffic circles to replace traffic signals. So it's a lot of stuff that they're recommending, and this Transportation Alternatives grant is a great opportunity, I think, for us to potentially fund these improvements. I spoke with the assistant director, Mr. Ruscher, who used to work at the city, and he thinks that this is a really smart play for us. And so I'd like to just get a consensus to have staff start that grant application. And it is something that
Is this a matching thing, or is this just?
No, they would pay for it. If we're approved for the grant, it would be covered. And in terms of how quickly these things move, which is like glacial, this is pretty quick. It's like a 3-year turnaround.
And Brian likes it.
Brian likes it. I mean, if Brian gives his word, it's kind of good as gold, in my opinion.
He's the best.
I think we should just, before we give a consensus, maybe confer with Ms. Barletto on if there's any downside.
Or in conflict with anything that the city is planning to do on that same corridor. So can you look at that and come back to us with something?
Thank you.
Good thinking.
All right. The other thing I wanted to bring up tonight sort of pertains to the special meeting we had, just in regard to projects over a certain financial threshold, I think should just come to us. I think we should lay that out in the process. A $44 million project, I think, should come to the commission regardless. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have a committee that evaluates us and provides us with rankings that we can use to help inform our decision, but I think anything over a certain level, when we're talking about that type of taxpayer money, especially with the GEO bond funded project we have coming up, I think that requires an additional level of oversight. So I would like us to have a conversation about that, figure out maybe if we're all in agreement that projects over a certain size should come to us. What does that threshold look like? How are we going to implement that? Is that something you guys would be up for having a meeting to talk about?
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. That's why I said it for this one. $44 million is a big number.
And also, in a case like this, it would prevent the process from getting slowed down. The process got held up this time because that wasn't part of the process. If it was in the future, I think it would help move bigger projects along quicker, frankly. Because we always have the right to bring them in front of us, but including it, making it part of the process would help it move quicker.
I'd be concerned about that. You take something that's not at all political, and I don't mean that in an offensive way. The staff does all the work for us. There's way more work going on behind the scenes than just that 20-minute presentation. Us acting like that's how they made that determination. The RFP goes out, it's written very specifically, it's evaluated, their criteria is vetted There is a lot more going on.
Staff research is practically everything that we vote on, right? We get a staff presentation for everything and we make decisions. That's our role as elected representatives. And when we're controlling what happens with tens of millions of dollars, or in this case, $100 million for the next project, I think that our constituents are going to want to see that we have taken a look at it. And the implication that it becomes political just by virtue of us looking at it, you could say that about,
that was political
you could say that about anything.
Yes, it was. There were two different parties in here.
I take exception to that. Why was it political?
I said no offense. But
you said no offense.
I did, and I meant no offense.
First of all, I didn't
but
think it was
issues
political.
get
Why
political.
was it political?
Yes, it's political.
I didn't speak to anyone about it, so I mean.
I'm saying it's an issue of politics in the city, and
Right, well, you have a consensus from three of us. Can we just move on?
Yeah, we can move on.
Well,
I think
anything we vote
Doesn't make
on,
any
by
sense.
definition, because we are elected.
So you're taking your experts right out? Are you still going to have them do the number system?
We
and then
do
you're
that
going
on
to
everything, and no
You're
one
not.
questions our experts more than you do, frankly.
I do, and that's our.
So
look,
in that case, it's okay, but it's not on a $100 million
no,
project.
I know when I don't know what I don't know,
doesn't make any
and
sense.
us making
A solution
determinations on a
certainly
$100 million project.
A solution could certainly be that staff, in part of that process, we would have a meeting with staff who would go through their stuff with
Absolutely.
us,
Like
which
I
is
said, we
fine.
would still have an evaluation committee, and like anything else, we would have a whole packet from staff, and we would make a decision based on that, like we can do now already. Just making it part of the process, so to expedite it next time, so we don't get held up.
In the corporate world, we had authority levels, based on dollar thresholds. There were some things that had to come to me as the CEO. There were some things that the CFO could sign off on. But the really big projects always had a look-see by the CEO.
But we get the look-see. We get that. That's why we were voting on it last week.
No, but we never discussed.
No, wait, and
we
then
never
we
discussed
pull
the
it.
ratings. We never actually discussed how they got to where they got to. Which is
They give
fair.
you the sheet. It's there in your backup material. The point being, why make a policy? You intervened because you were concerned because there was 1 point off. You all agreed to hear it, and it came down the same way. We went with
Well, that
what
should
the
give you
staff
confidence
voted
in
on.
our decision.
Exactly.
I don't lack the confidence in our decision making. My concern is why create a policy where we're going to do this at every project over a certain amount of money. Let's just pull them if we have a concern. You may pull up the project and the number
Because
numeric
this held
disparity
up
could
the
be 20
project
points.
this time. This would expedite
By
it
one
going
meeting?
forward.
It held it
Yeah.
up by one meeting. A month? I'm not that concerned
But
about
if
it.
if we set the thresholds high enough or appropriately enough, we won't be looking to approve
And when you
many
set them at
projects.
that point, no disrespect to any of us, but we are really not experts in the field to make those determinations.
But-
I'm not trying to. I'm just saying
But we are. You just said we can make
We're
that determination now. We just did it
policymakers.
tonight.
we're policymakers.
I mean, I've seen you argue with our CFO for like an hour
I
before.
have,
You're not an
because
accountant, so
No,
what are we talking
I
about
totally
here?
agree with you, but when I get different answers as to why $753,000 is being moved from a reserve fund into the general fund, and two different people in the city tell me different answers, I'm going to argue.
Right. So
It's a totally different
again,
thing.
when $100 million of taxpayer money is being spent that was approved through a GEO bond, that's something that I want to have a
These
say
are our
in.
paid employees
That's
who are
something I want to
educated
have
in
a
the
say in.
field.
I was elected to have a say in that.
I've stated my position.
And I would just
So
say
hot.
in the corporate world, they would bring that to us almost every time you'd go with their recommendation. Very, very seldom.
Right, and that is what we do now, unless we want to pull it.
Okay,
So
we're
you're
talking in
still-
circles. Can we just
Excuse
move
me,
on?
I would like to say,
I'm over
Mr.
this.
Market, I'm not done with my
workshop.
statement, if you don't mind. Mr. Market,
Sorry.
they give you that. You get it. It was in your packet last week. Right. So you would pull it. The point is,
With respect,
right
you've
now,
made this
I'm
point
not
6
done
times. Can I
state-
just?
No, I'm not. 'cause
You're
I
actually
would like
interrupting
to-
my comments. I
I'm
wasn't done
speaking to
speaking.
Mr. Marker.
I understand, but you've already said this
So
several
finish
times.
yours, and then
I'm
I'll
going to
finish
finish
it.
my comments. When it gets to you, feel free to chime back in with this, although no one's going to care by then, because we already have a consensus.
Well, Mr. Market, I would ask you to consider what I have to say before you make your final determination.
I would, of course.
You have the right to pull it right now. So if the project came up today,
Are we still doing this?
yes,
Because I
we
thought
are,
I was
because
talking
I'm
now.
speaking to Mr. Marker. I thought you were done. because
No,
you
I'm
just
not.
said-
I asked
Okay,
if I
keep
could
going.
continue. I'm waiting for you to stop
Okay,
talking.
go.
Thanks.
Continue. Please,
Jesus.
Please.
So, I actually want to say, bring something fun and lighthearted up, but it's weird now.
It is weird and awkward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we had a great event. over the weekend, we had our Delray Beach Police Department playing the Boynton Beach Police Department in a softball game, and Delray Beach claimed victory. And I was told that there was a bet on the line that the losing department's chief had to come into the winner's city hall and acknowledge the superiority and prowess, of course, of the winner. And so I just want to put that on the record, hoping word reaches Boynton Beach's police chief, because I'd love to have him come in as our guest and reference how amazing our Delray Beach PD is. So no, it was a great event put on by our Delray Beach for Delray Citizens for Delray Beach. So great event as always. They typically do the guns and hoses, but this was this year's iteration of that. I also just wanted to thank Gina again for the great work with launching our creative arts school last week. Really, really excited about that. It's a super big deal for our city. Artists and the culture around that is really at the heart of what our city is and what makes it special. And it means a lot to a lot of people to get this off the ground. And you, frankly, you kind of helped us clean up a mess here, if I'm being honest. And you ran with it, and I'm really excited for what that's going to look like. So thanks again, Gina. I'm really excited about that.
Right. Commissioner Casal.
Right. Mr. Marker.
Yes.
These are on your agenda already.
I know
they
that.
can be pulled.
I know.
We have seen many situations. I disagree with the part about political. Look at the 600, 700, 800 block when BH3 wanted it, and we had over an hour and a half of phone calls from people who thought they were going to get jobs at Publix. It happens, unfortunately. If you see an application for a project like that where there is a short point spread, I don't disagree necessarily with pulling it, but I think you're going to go with the staff regardless. But the point is, right now you have the option to pull it instead of you saying, I'm taking that from staff. I think we should leave that in staff's hands and leave it as it is with the option to pull it if we want to pull it. Staff may review something and there may be such a disparity, you don't want to make them go through the process of doing another 20-minute presentation. By the way, there'll be 5 applicants, so you're talking 20 minutes from each applicant. There's a lot more that goes into this process than we are aware of. Sitting up here and saying we are going to do that, I don't think it's smart to do that. I don't mind pulling one here and there, but on a regular basis, that's the staff's expertise area. It's not ours.
And then again, we would set the threshold at an appropriate level where only the really chunky projects came our way.
What's chunky?
I don't know what that number is. I'd have to
We
do
don't.
some
I don't
research
think.
on it.
I don't think anyone was articulating a number. I think they were saying there
That's
were
the
certain.
part I wanted to leave open for discussion, obviously, was a number. But there's also a transparency component to this, right? Especially for something that's GeoBond funded. Why shouldn't the public see what options we're choosing from? They're not going to see it if it just goes through
So
staff.
we're going to sit through all of that pre-processed stuff, the RFP
We'll sit through
stuff,
presentations
the
like we
vetting.
did tonight, but it would be like the top,
But
whatever,
that's the
5.
point. There's more in it than the presentations. There's way
And
more
we would
that's
get
happening.
a packet with all the other
So
information,
you're just
like
going to
we
have
do
them
for
grade
anything
it,
else.
give it all to you, and then you're going to make
It would
the
be
decision?
presentations like we had tonight. It's the same process that we did tonight. It would just be included.
I think again.
I don't understand what's so complicated
Corporate
about this.
experience. It would be an executive overview. They would put together a
Right,
very
but in the
tight-
corporate experience, the executive is more knowledgeable. In this experience, the executive, us, is probably not the more knowledgeable. So it's kind of like the reverse, actually.
That doesn't stop us from making decisions on a litany of other items that come before
Right, but
us.
oftentimes we will go with the staff.
And we could
did
in this
evening.
case, couldn't we? We're not.
We'll
It's not like
establish
if staff makes a recommendation, we have to go against it. We could obviously adopt their recommendation if it makes sense.
Just not sure why we would change the
Jesus.
policy.
You've made point made. We'll figure out how we're going to do that later on. I'm personally not opposed if the number's large enough that we should have a review. Whether that number, I'm not saying that number's $5 million, but at $40 million, which essentially exhausted the reserves of the CRA, it certainly was worth us taking a look at it because we are the ultimate decision makers. Commissioner Burns.
Okay. All right. Just 2 things.
I'm moving on.
One of them is an old
Give me all
complaint.
this chocolate. No wonder I'm just you got me all, you
He's
know.
hyper.
You're all sugared up.
An old complaint that's coming back on, and it's the noise on the Berry Island that's made by
Yes.
these leaf blowers. I don't know if we have a policy or if we, how we're going to address it, but that's for a future conversation. But noise leaf blowers.
The government passed, and I think it depends on if the governor vetoes it or not, right? I mean, basically, we have to wait and see, but right now we're not, we can't really do much, so we have to wait and see.
All right, and the second thing is the Florida League of Cities launched a Florida City Jobs new job portal. I know we've been discussing having job seekers. So they have a portal designed to help cities attract top talent. So you can just go on, plug in there, and it's self-administration. It has data insights, and it has advanced searchability for job seekers. So you can filters out job types, locations, the whole thing, and it does the work for you. So that's through our Florida League of Cities, and it's called Florida City Jobs. That's it.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I have one thing.
Wait, can I go? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mark.
No, you go ahead, Julie.
All right, so I was also going to say thanks, Gina. Woohoo! Was amazing. I think we should nominate Gina for Employee of the Month. This was, by the way, one of the most outstanding things you did.
Employees?
Stepped in. Well, I'm not.
We're independent contractors?
That's
Good,
right.
Good.
I also want to say, yeah, so Mr. Moore, maybe, I don't know, but I think we would probably unanimously agree to make her Employee of the Month. I know there's some benefits that she can't get, but the plaque is pretty awesome. And maybe the day off is irrelevant and you won't get compensated for 8 hours because you're on salary.
There's room.
So, as I reported earlier this year, maybe late last year, we reformatted the Employee of the Month award to Outstanding Employee Award. So it doesn't have to fall on a specific month or anything like that.
I love it.
On that note, if I like it,
Yeah,
and
let's do
we'll
it.
offer some consideration.
Okay.
It
So,
really depends
Yay.
how she responds to my next remarks.
Oh, geez. No, I think it's a foregone. And I
Anybody wanna
also
say one
just
more
wanted to say the Delray Youth Tennis Foundation is dedicated to helping underprivileged children succeed on the court and off the court. So I was really excited to be part of that. And thank you, Mr. Moore. Also, I don't know if anybody's reading this fabulous book, Remarkably Bright Creatures, but I am. And you are. I'm going to be doing a book discussion at the library November 8th at 3 o'clock. So anybody who's reading it should come. It's so good. And that's by, put together by Read Together Palm Beach. And I think that's all I have.
Great. Mr. Mark, you had one brief comment?
Be very quick. Wanted to tip of the hat to Laura Simon for the concert on Friday night. It was, if you went, it was everything it could have been. The food was great, the bands were great, the crowd was great. There were lots of young families there. Our new fire chief was there, dancing like a crazy guy, or not. And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up is I met with Daniel Hartwell this week, and I know Mr. Moore met with him today. He's the gentleman that runs the Beatles on the Beach program. It's always been a big event for us. That's coming up in March, and we're going to have to make some decisions about that event. So Mr. Hartwell will probably reach out to all of you individually and tell you kind of where he's at. And, everything comes down to money, right? So we just are going to have to make a decision on what we want to do. So I'd encourage you to all meet with them, and then Mr. Moore can hopefully help us out. That's it. Thank you.
Gina, thank you for a job well done. Sincerely. I mean, you took, in record time, got this thing up and running. I know I pestered you every other week. Are we on time? Are we on schedule? Is this getting done? And you actually eclipsed even my greatest expectations. So I really, you did a fine job, and you deserve to be recognized for it. I mentioned to you, and that I'm not saying you shouldn't be outstanding employee, subject to this next comment, but we have a wonderful kitchen there that was really the brainchild of former Mayor Petrolia, with ideas to try to do something there. And in my limited canvassing of some of the restaurants in town, they thought it was a great idea because it would help them train people and gives people job opportunities to learn a skill and things such as that. And it's something that everybody has talked about. The education board talked about. We can teach people skills. We can teach people these things. So I am hoping that you are looking at my request to come up with some kind of a proposal through the city manager's office, of course. I spoke to him about it today. And to see whether we can also develop something for that empty space, because I think we have really a world-class teaching facility there. in an area which is the city needs. And I'm hoping that maybe you could help us, the city can come up with some kind of an idea how we can maximize the use of that portion of that building as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. I just would like to know what's the status of our predatory parking ordinance. Hey, I got my 3x5s out. I'm sorry, Anthea.
It was ready to go, and then we received some feedback that we're still in the process of addressing. There's some dynamic parking issues and how that gets posted on the signs. So we're working through it, hopefully soon.
Okay, because it's,
We're going to shoot for it before the end of the year.
I'd like to, because we're coming in season.
Understood.
And
I know.
It meant a lot to a lot of different people, so I just want to make sure that we are.
It's like every other ordinance. We start writing it, and then it becomes a bigger. It's like the onion in law school. You keep peeling it, and there's still more layers, and you can't get to the bottom of it. We're almost at the bottom.
It's kind of like commissioner comments. Okay, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. We're adjourned.